Welcome back to another FPL deadline stream, this time out of Gameweek 25, and this will be a slightly different deadline because it's on a Friday at 6:30 p.m. in the UK. We still have over 2 hours left until that happens, and I'll be gifting 10 memberships in this live stream, and if we do hit 5 super chats, then I'll be going live for even longer, covering the early lineups between Leeds and Nottingham Forest. But there's a lot to cover. I've got a major benching dilemma this week. Do I leave the likes of Haaland, Ekitike, Thiago, or somebody else on the bench, possibly one of Rodgers or Wilson, which is what most of the algorithms are suggesting? I just don't see myself benching Bruno Fernandes this week, definitely not. Enzo and Declan Rice are also quite similar in that regard, but could we see some benchings there for certain players like Timber and Enzo? I'll be covering all of that in this video with my predicted lineups, the top 10 captains, and the updated clean sheet odds, although, bit of a spoiler alert, there haven't been any updates over the last couple of days, but there's a lot to get through, and that includes your questions, which I'll start off with. First and foremost, drop a like on this stream, subscribe to the channel. We're hitting new goals throughout the year. We recently hit 38k subscribers on YouTube, and 39,000 will be the next big objective. Cylindra says, hey Dylan, hope you're doing well. I made 2 free transfers to sell Ekitike and Shada to Mane and Fernandes. Gonna captain him. Now, which one do I bench between Anderson, Thiago, and Timber? Probably Anderson from those 3. And Thiago did score a brace in the reverse fixture against Newcastle. I wouldn't expect that to happen again, but I think a goal is possible at St James's Park, especially if Newcastle defend the way they did against Man City on Wednesday. Sam says, hi Dylan, how should I start and what order on the bench? So Sanchez, Dubravka, Rodon, Timber, Gabriel, Gay, Chalobah, Rodgers, Rice, Enzo, Bruno, Semenyo, Thiago, Haaland, Krupi Jr. I'd start Sanchez, Timber. Yeah, Gabriel always starts for me, no doubt about that. Gay is certainly left on the bench. I would start Chalobah. I don't think Rodon is too bad this week, but I would probably have him first or second on this bench. In terms of the attack, that's where things get very tricky, leaving one of these out, but I would lean towards Semenyo on the bench right now from the players you've got. It's between him and Krupi Jr. I know some people might also point towards Thiago, and he's not too far behind, but I think Semenyo first on the bench, Rodon second, and Mark Gay third. I think that's the way I'd go about it, and Dubravka as your backup. I think both Enzo and Timber will start, but I've got more concerns about Timber, who is fine according to Mikel Arteta, but he did miss training on Wednesday, so that was certainly a bit concerning. I think the news broke shortly after I recorded my best wildcard squad, but I still stand by that pick, and in order to triple up on Arsenal, I think Gabriel is by far the best option. Rice would be second, and in third spot would be Timber, and doubling up on that Arsenal defence is the way to go. With Enzo Fernandez, I've seen 1 or 2 predicted lineups for Chelsea which don't include him in the lineup, but I think he will start against Wolves. Welcome, Barif. Good to see you. Will Timber play the double in Sunderland? Not a guarantee. I think in one of those fixtures, in terms of Sunderland at home or Wolves away, I think Timber will be benched. For Brentford away, definitely not. I think Timber starts that game, but Ben White is a quality right back, and before Timber came in, I think White was one of the best performing right backs in the country, so Arsenal in good hands with either of them. Timber's more solid defensively. I think White offers a bit more going forward, but I couldn't guarantee that Timber plays all 3 of those matches you're looking for. Start 1, Van Heck or Tarkowski. Difficult one on paper, I think. Very difficult. Tarkowski is generally the better FPL asset, but looking purely at the fixture this week, I'm going to say Tarkowski, just about. Yeah, so Gameweek 25, well, you would think it's tomorrow, right? But the deadline is early because we do have a Friday night game between Leeds United and Nottingham Forest. So the deadline today is at 6:30 p.m. And yeah, I sort of remind people sometimes of the deadlines just by doing these streams, so hopefully that helps. Why Arsenal get a double Gameweek but not City? Because City are facing Crystal Palace in Gameweek 31, and Crystal Palace would have a clash with the Europa Conference League. I did allude to this in some of my recent videos and streams, but that's the main reason why. City could double in 33, but there's also the possibility of Gameweek 36 being the double for them. But yeah, I've talked about this before with those doubles and blanks. They will all happen after Gameweek 30, with the exception of Gameweek 26, where Arsenal and Wolves will have 2 games within the same match day. Twan Victor says, hi Dylan, -4 Thiago to Joao Pedro and Dorgu to Timber, or just one of them. Or just one of them. It depends on the context of your squad. So if you've got, let's say, Anderson, Gabriel, and Chalobah, you don't need to take a hit for Timber right now. So my advice would be Thiago to Joao Pedro now for free and buy Timber for Double Gameweek 26. The only thing is Arsenal have a great chance of a clean sheet on paper with a 62% probability against Sunderland at home. They're by far the highest this week, so you might miss out on that opportunity, but I think that's probably the best way to approach it. Thoughts on captaining either Mbumo, Enzo, Rice or Bowen this week? Yeah, Rice isn't a bad shout. He's not in my top 10 captaincy list, which might surprise you. The other three are, and Jared Bowen is the lowest of the three, but he's got a good fixture on paper against Burnley. I think Enzo Fernandez, there would be some concerns about him starting, but I think he will. And even in a deeper position, he can score, like he did against West Ham a couple of days ago. And Brian Mbumo has very promising goal threat. We've always seen that with him, but I wouldn't pick him over Bruno Fernandes, for example, and I've been very consistent on that. Start Tarkowski or Hall? I have Wilson and Thiago. I'd start Tarkowski. Is Haaland going to start, and if so, do I sell? I think Haaland will start. I don't think he's a sell, but I wouldn't captain him this week. I'd actually be closer to benching him than captaining him, which sounds crazy, but it's not very often that I'd recommend that sort of thing. Bomastico says, hi Dylan, I'm wildcarding Anderson or Cunha. I already have Rice, Fernandez, Enzo and Semenyo. Well, if money is no issue, I don't mind having that second United asset in the midfield, and I think Cunha is a promising differential. He was talked about in my recent Transfer Tips podcast, but I also highlighted Elliot Anderson in my wildcard video, and he was the sort of ideal fifth midfielder and eighth attacker, but I think it does depend on other factors. For example, do you have Krupi Jr. or Mane? Maybe even both. I doubt that's the case, but even just by having one of them, I'd be a little bit conscious of having a really cheap forward and also a very cheap midfielder, because in terms of flexibility and the squad structure, I would see some concerns in the future, and that's something I talked about in my wildcard video when I included both of them in that team. But I think pound for pound, Anderson offers better value, and I wouldn't mind having him from the get-go. Cunha will have a higher ceiling. He's going to score more goals than Anderson, but when you also factor in bonus points, defensive contributions and assists, I think Anderson is the complete package right now. Good afternoon, Pieter. Good to see you. Benching Ekitike is crazy, so I have to be very clear about this. This team is not locked in, and I said this in my team selection video yesterday. I even put a poll out about my benching dilemma. Benching Ekitike is crazy, but what about benching Wilson against Everton at home? Maybe not as crazy on paper, but I would say that it's not ideal. Rodgers away to Bournemouth. We all know what he can do, and he scored a few braces this season. Benching Erling Haaland is madness, right? And then you look at Rice facing Sunderland at home. I'm not going to captain, or I should say I'm not going to bench Bruno Fernandes. And Enzo facing Wolves. With my assumption that he starts, it makes no sense to bench him. So I think people would logically point towards Thiago away to Newcastle, but he scored a brace against them earlier this season. So I don't think there's a clear answer in terms of who to bench. And this is not set in stone. There could be a change or two, mainly with my bench order. And in terms of transfers, I wouldn't rule it out definitively. But yeah, I already have enough benching dilemmas on my hands as it is. I think buying somebody now would only intensify that. I would like to have a free membership. I don't choose who gets it, by the way. I click a button and then YouTube allocates it randomly. I believe that those who are more active, and you can see the top fan section, it says in the live chat, it has like a leaderboard for the community. So those near the top will have a great chance, but it won't reward spammers, just to kind of make that clear. Cash or Senesi? Probably Senesi. I have gone for a draw in that game. You're going to see my scoreline predictions fairly soon, but Senesi is more likely to get defensive contributions or walk away with something. City with 2 away clean sheets this whole season. Yeah, defensively they've been very poor, and of course that plays into what you're saying about benching Ekitike. I get that, but it could also be Wirtz, Salah, Gakpo, even Szoboszlai. There are so many players in Liverpool who could score. It doesn't have to necessarily be Ekitike, and he scored that brace, of course, in the previous game week, but let's not forget he also had a pretty dry patch fairly recently, and that was mainly due to injury. But even with some starts and appearances off the bench, he wasn't that effective. So he has been one of the best strikers this season in the Prem, but there's also a degree of inconsistency there with Hugo Ekitike. Hi Dylan, would you consider transferring Wirtz in for Wilson this week? I like Wirtz as a pick, but I wouldn't buy him for Wilson this week. If anything, I think Wilson's better against Everton at home. Welcome Beardy, always a pleasure. Charlotte Frost says Saka out. If so, for who? Got Bruno. Well, Arteta said that Saka won't be out for long. it seems, and Odegaard should be back for Arsenal in a couple of days. So those are some updates we got today in the Friday press conference, and Timber is available. So that has been put to bed. I would sell Saka to Bruno. I did it last week, and a couple of weeks ago, before Fernandes faced Man City, I was looking at him as my Foden replacement, and the only reason I didn't do it then was because I saw the Arsenal fixture and thought, I think Fernandes will blank there, and I got it wrong. But yeah, I think Fernandes is a no-brainer. You might see it as being a bit too late and trying to go for something a little bit different, which could be Matheus Cunha instead. But I think Fernandes is currently the best midfielder in FPL. Mumbai Gaming says wildcard active: Jose Sarr, Henderson, Gabriel Munoz, Senesi, Hugo Bueno, Richards, Madueke, Rice, Palmer, Esteval, Bruno, Joao Pedro, Bowen, Mane, and next week bench boost. I get what you're doing. Wolves double in Gameweek 26 against Nottingham Forest away and Arsenal at home. I would not be tripling up on them, especially with a goalkeeper in Jose Sarr, who costs 4.2 million. That's absolutely fine. But then also Hugo Bueno. I just don't think that's viable, even with the double, because that includes Arsenal at home. So my main advice for you is to trim that down. Maybe if you really want extra doublers and going for something a bit different, then I would just get rid of Hugo Bueno. I think Mane and Jose Sarr, whilst I'm not a big fan of having both of them simultaneously, I can understand it. They're both very cheap, but I think a triple up in Wolves doesn't make sense for me, even with a double in 26. With the rest of your team, there are some very good picks in there, but you've got two Palace defenders in Richards and Munoz. I think even having one of them is a bit risky based on their recent form and the lack of clean sheets. With Munoz, I understand it because he is an excellent FPL pick in general, but I would probably replace Richards as well. So my main advice is making a few modifications to your defensive line. Hello everyone, bench 1, Thiago, Tarkowski and Goodmanson. I'd still bench Goodmanson, even though Leeds have a decent chance of a clean sheet on paper against Nottingham Forest tonight. City's record at Anfield is awful, 2 wins since 2000, and one of those was during COVID with no fans at the stadium. Yeah, look, I think Liverpool will win, but I'm backing a sort of low-scoring affair. I don't think it will be fireworks, and who knows, this could age horribly wrong, right? We'll wait and see on Sunday, but yeah, I'm not that confident in City, which is why for some people I recommended benching Semenyo and Mark Gahey. Omara says, hello Dylan, my team, Lamens, Timber, Gabriel, Cash, Enzo Verts, Imbumo, Wilson, Brobby, Raul Jimenez, Haaland, Dubravka, Vandenberg, Stack and Chow. 2 free transfers, 2.8 million in the bank. Thoughts on Cash to Maguire and Stack to Madueke this week? Those are certainly differential picks. They'll have their merits, but personally for Arsenal, I think Rice is by far the best midfielder. I know he's template, but with Madueke, you're going to get inconsistency. He had a great performance against Leeds, standing in for the injured Bukayo Saka. But then against Chelsea, you saw the sort of rough edges of the player where he's a very good dribbler. One-on-one, you could say he's one of the best in the league, but in terms of his end product, it does leave a lot to be desired. And that's the most important thing for FPL when it comes to attackers. So I wouldn't go for Madueke. If you can stretch to Bukayo Saka, if you can stretch to Declan Rice, I'd 100% recommend it. Cash to Maguire, I'm not so sure about that. You've also got Lamens in goal. I know United are in good form, but if anything, I'd double up on their midfield with Fernandes and then someone like Mbeumo, who you've already got in your team. I also think Cunha is viable, but a double up defensively. They conceded twice to Arsenal, twice to Fulham. Clean sheet against Man City, to be fair, but I don't trust them defensively, so the answer is going to be no for both transfers. Keith says, hi Dylan, who is the best out of Dewsbury Hall or Gravenberch for this week as my first sub? I prefer Dewsbury Hall. Hi Dylan, who to start out of these three? Tarkowski, Joachim Andersen or Lacroix? Cheers. Probably Tarkowski for me, but that's a very close call. I think Everton-Fulham's quite tough, and it could even be a draw there. You're going to see my scoreline prediction fairly soon, but I think Lacroix is at the bottom of that list. I want to get Bruno this week so bad, but I can't. You're not the only one. I've talked about this in the Discord server with several people, and yeah, it can seem like you're too late to the party, but he is the best midfielder in the game right now. That could change, of course, but he has been very consistent when called upon. Hi Dylan, will Bruno Guimaraes start? I can't guarantee it, but based on Eddie Howe's comments and the fact he was quite close over the last couple of matches, I think Bruno Guimaraes will start. And they also have a lot of injuries right now, including one to Joelinton. So it's very important they get Bruno Guimaraes back. Their Premier League record without him is awful. They have never won a Premier League match without Bruno Guimaraes in the side since he signed for them 5 to 6 years ago. So that is very telling. Hi Dylan, should I bench Chow versus Brentford or Senesi against Villa? I don't think either team keep a clean sheet, but the more likely would be Newcastle only just. But then when you break it down in terms of defensive contributions and attacking potential, even bonus points, I think Senesi is the more likely. So that's a very close call. But I think in this situation, I would lean towards Chow ever so slightly. Welcome, Safir. Start 2, Rao, Ekitike, Anderson, and Wilson. I would start Wilson and Ekitike. If I could, by the way, I'd bench Dalot, just to be very clear, but you have to play 3 defenders at least. And even with Anderson over Ekitike, yeah, I'd pick the Frenchman as well in that situation. So I'd favour the attackers. Top 2 replacements for Saka or hold on to him? Well, apart from Bruno Fernandes, who is the very obvious pick, I would probably say Declan Rice and I think Enzo right now. Hello, everyone. Bench 1, Thiago, Tarkowski, Goodmanson. So this was covered as well. Hi, Dylan. -4, Enzo in, Bruno Guimaraes out. Slightly difficult to answer this one because whilst I think Enzo Fernandez will start, there are concerns about both players. So Enzo could get a rest. Bruno Guimaraes is still suffering with that injury, but he should be back fairly soon. And if both of them were available from now until the end of the season and start the same number of games, it would be very close. I think Enzo would get more goals, but Bruno Guimaraes would offer more assists, defensive contributions, and bonus points. Maybe the assist is contentious, but I think it'd be very neck and neck between them. So in terms of a -4 this week, if you're backing Enzo to start, I'm going to say yes, but I still like Bruno Guimaraes in the long term. Hi, Dylan. Play one of Dubravka or Rufs. It's going to be Dubravka here. Good to see you, Duarte. Hey, Dylan. Bom dia. Thiago, Ekitike, Haaland, Wilson, Anderson, bench 1. Joachim Anderson or Elliot Anderson. Irrespective of who it is, I would bench that player. Donnarumma or Dubravka? Dubravka. I regret going with Thiago on wildcard in Gameweek 24. Should have bought him back in 27. You never know, though. Newcastle away and Arsenal at home don't look great, but there's still a chance that he produces returns in those matches, but Joao Pedro is currently the flavour of the month. I'm not activating the wildcard right now. The plan is to use that after Gameweek 30, but things could force my hand in terms of injuries, suspensions, and other factors, but that is the current plan, to use most of my chips after Gameweek 30. Even the bench boost, probably in 33. That'd be my sort of strategy at the moment, but that is also subject to change, and I'm open-minded about things, and you need to adapt to the environment, and we don't know exactly how the doubles and blanks will land in terms of which teams will double in 33 or in 36, and the full nature of those blanks and doubles. So that will also have a big influence and bearing on it, but I'd probably say around Gameweek 30 to 32. Around that time frame is when I'm most likely to wildcard right now. Thank you, Bosmatico, and also to Keith and the other moderators for keeping things flowing. The Lone Wolf says, hey Dylan, Watkins and Saka to Joao Pedro and Rice for a -4 if I don't Consis first off my bench. I think Watkins will start this game against Bournemouth, but to buy Joao Pedro and Rice, with Saka likely to miss out, I'd probably take the hit. Good luck as well, Kuka. Always a pleasure. Rodgers or Rice want to start? Probably Rice. Most of the algorithms would also suggest this, in terms of AI, if you will, these tools, but I think Rice has the better fixture. He's got more routes to points than Rodgers, and I think Bournemouth Aston Villa is a tough game to call. With Arsenal, I know they drew against Sunderland earlier this season, but I think at home they should have enough to overpower the Black Cats. Bowen is a good captaincy shout. You're going to see my top 10 list, and he does feature there, but there are at least 8 players that I'd rank higher than him. Do you think Guimaraes and Haaland will start? Yes, I do. It's not 100% guaranteed, though, I will admit. Start Garner, Mane, or Virgil. Out of those 3 players, I'd probably start Garner. Hey Dylan, I have Gordon, but no free transfer, and if I were to bench him, I'll have to play Chow, so should I take a hit for a transfer? So Eddie Howe has essentially confirmed that Gordon will miss this game, but the injury isn't serious, so he should be back fairly soon. But I think in this case, just play Chow. I'd still replace Gordon next week, though, even though he could be available for Gameweek 26. I have Krupa Jr. on my bench. My forwards are Haaland and Bowen. And based on your advice, I have Anderson. Thanks again. That's good squad depth, and I think that forward line looks very promising this week. Krupa Jr. is an ideal 4.7 million forward, and Elliot Anderson has been excellent recently, so I think that's a very sound pick. Hi mate, hope you're doing well, says Alex. Start 2 out of Senesi, Chow, Anderson, and Rodon. I think they're all viable choices this week, but I would pick Joachim Anderson and Rodon. Hey Dylan, considering Saka to Madueke and Xhaka to Mbeumo, it's going to be the same thing on Madueke. He has moments, particularly in the Champions League this season, but the end product is very inconsistent. And if you want an Arsenal midfielder, I'm going to say the boring answer and highlight Declan Rice as the best option. Xhaka to Mbeumo, absolutely fine. That's a great transfer, but instead of Madueke, I would raise you a Declan Rice. Thoughts on Foden? He's a very clear sell. He has been for over a month, and I said this very early on. He was one of the main catalysts for my growth in FPL in October and November in particular. I think it was November. Even in the early parts of December as well, but he has just really tailed off. He's not even getting starts. He played 2 minutes against Tottenham. That's very telling. Whilst he could start against Liverpool, I would sell him without any hesitation right now. Cunha to Mbeumo and Gordon to Enzo. Great transfers on paper. I would still recommend Fernandes over Mbeumo personally, but Mbeumo's the second best Manchester United option. With the other transfer you talk about, yeah, I think Enzo is a very clear upgrade. Just bear in mind that some predicted lineups do have Enzo on the bench. I believe he will start, and you're going to see my lineups very soon, but yeah, good transfers overall. Pedro Neto starts, that's interesting. I'm not entirely sure about this. I was very conflicted when doing the Chelsea 11 between Esteval and Pedro Neto, who is currently yellow flagged with a knock. But if Pedro Neto is available and fit enough, he will start most games for Chelsea, and against his former club, I could see that being the case again, but we don't have that information right now, so I hazarded a guess and I went with Esteval. And I'll keep you updated on that. Maybe we get some information before the deadline, and I can make an adjustment or two to my predicted lineup. Thank you to Marius for the super chat. Raya, Dubravka, Dorgu, O'Brien, Van Dijk, Anderson, Gabriel, Bruno Fernandes, Rice, Rogers, Dewsbury Hall, Semenyo, Ekitike, Haaland, and Guiu. 1 free transfer, 0.1 in the bank. Wildcard needed. Okay, so Ryan Dubravka, absolutely fine, especially for Double Gameweek 26. I think Van Dijk is reasonable. The same goes for Joachim Anderson and even O'Brien. And Gabriel's the best defender in the game. Bruno Fernandes is the best midfielder in the game. And you've got Rice, who's a great option for Double Gameweek 26. Even afterwards against Chelsea and Tottenham, I think he's a very solid and dependable option. Rogers is fine. Semenyo is still a top quality midfielder. And Ekitike and Haaland are 2 of the best forwards in FPL. So those are the good things about it. The players I don't like so much would be Guiu for sure, but he's just a budget option. I would probably say, well, Dorgu is a very obvious one because he's injured for the next couple of months. And maybe Dewsbury Hall. So really when I break it down like that, I don't think it needs a wild card, and you could save it for later in the season. And at least speaking from my perspective, after Gameweek 30, so that sort of stage or time frame between 30 to 32, that's when I'll most likely wildcard, maybe bench boost in 33. And with the triple captain and free hit, that remains to be seen. But I think the free hit in a blank Gameweek would be very reasonable. And yeah, triple captain 36 could certainly be on the agenda. Some people might even suggest Gameweek 26 with Gabriel Magalhaes. That is also reasonable as well. But with a wildcard in your situation, I don't think it's needed, no. And with 1 free transfer, I'd roll and then have 2 available moves for Double Gameweek 26, which will be very important. Hey Dylan, play Ekitike or Dewsbury Hall? Ekitike. Thank you, Keith. As he says, let's get the likes up. So first and foremost, we'll get to 100, and then afterwards we'll push on towards more. But I do appreciate those that have done so already. Also, check out the links in the description. There's my Patreon, the Championships Discord server. I'll also be gifting 10 memberships in this stream, which grants you early access to my videos, proud to comments, and many other perks. Also, check out the Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. You get FPL and you see your fantasy updates, and also for my content, so you're always well prepared for every single deadline. Welcome, Awale. Anderson, Sarr, Enzo, Bruno Fernandes, and Bumo. Sell one for Rice. Probably Sarr. But Bruno is Bruno, says Ahmad. I'm torn between captaining Bruno or Pedro. Both have been great for me, but Pedro has the easier game. Yeah, so you're going to see my top 10 captaincy list again, which was highlighted in my team selection video yesterday, but Fernandes is the preference. Joao Pedro is a close second, though. Sonny says, sup Dylan, happy Friday. Likewise, start Dallo, Mane, or O'Reilly. Probably Dallo. Yeah, I'm not particularly enthused with those options, and I've been very disappointed by Dallo since signing him. Thank you as well to Keith. Gravenberch or Dewsbury Hall? So I think you got the answer to this question, but Dewsbury Hall is my preference for Gameweek 25. Rodgers or Rice want to start Henderson or Dubravka? Rice and probably Henderson. Haaland or Thiago if I cannot put them at the same time? Well, the answer that most of the community have voted for, which you're going to see very soon, is Thiago. I'll be honest, I'm more tempted to bench Haaland, but I just can't see myself doing it. And I've never done it before, benching a player of that caliber. And we all know what Haaland can do, even against Liverpool, but at Anfield, Man City's record is horrific. Paredes says, can't decide between Kelleher and Dubravka. Last game, it was a 9-point difference. I went for Dubravka, owned Saka and Miley. I can do both to Rice and Mbumo. I'd still pick Dubravka this week, despite the massive swing you experienced in 24. And sometimes goalkeeper swings can be brutal, even when you spend a minimal amount in that position. I think with the transfers you suggested, yes, that looks really enticing. You'd have to play Chow against Thiago. I'm not really too bothered by that. There is even a world where both of them blank, which obviously would be far from ideal, but once again, if you don't have Bruno Fernandes, I'd highly recommend going for him over Mbumo, but that'd be very nitpicky, and I think Rice is an excellent choice. Nothing happened to Thiago necessarily. Start Mukiele or O'Reilly. I think both of them will blank, but if I had to pick, probably Mukiele. Bench Mukiele or Hill. I'd bench Mukiele. Hi Dylan, hopefully a great game this week. Are you benching Haaland? Well, currently I've got Ekitike benched. I'm uncomfortable with any of these players dropping out. Whether it's Wilson, Rice, Enzo, Rodgers, Fernandes, Thiago, Haaland or Ekitike. I'd like to start all of them if possible, but that isn't the case. One of them has to drop out, and at the moment, it is the Frenchman. Thank you, Benzu. Who should replace Evanilson, Mane, Calvert-Lewin or Jesus? I'd be most tempted by Jesus. I think he'll start against Sunderland, but I talked about this in my team selection. What I might end up doing, actually, to buy Timber for O'Reilly is to sell Thiago to Mane, and that means I get 2 extra doublers, and it gives me the funds to buy Timber, who is my preferred Arsenal secondary defender to complement Gabriel Magalhaes. Start 2 from Munoz, Aina, Senesi. I would probably bench Senesi here. Diogo says, I decided to create a secondary account this season. I'm literally #1 in Portugal and 110 in the world, but can't brag to my friends because they don't know it's me. Main account is ranked at 1.1 million. That's such a massive gap, by the way, a massive difference. But yeah, I can see the appeal of why some people do that. But yeah, I also see others complain about that sort of thing and they say it's against the rules and stuff like that. I mean, I've managed my family members' team as well, and sometimes I forget to do things and I get frustrated. But yeah, very well played. And yeah, we'll see how you end up doing. But hopefully you can make up for the lost ground with your main account, which is the most important thing. Not sure who to bench. In front, I have Mbumo, Wilson, Enzo, Semenyo, Somerville, Haaland, Joao Pedro, Ekitike. Despite his brilliant form recently, I'd probably bench Somerville. If you really want to start him, though, against Burnley, then maybe Semenyo would be the one to bench, which I'm not a big fan of, even against Liverpool away. I think Semenyo is one of those players who could actually return in this fixture, like he did in Gameweek 1 for Bournemouth at Anfield. Should I transfer Anderson to Timber this week for a -4 or just do it next week for the double and hope I don't need to make any more transfers? Do it next week. Don't do it for a -4 now. Current 11 says Safer, Sanchez, Timber, Gabriel, Chalobah and Mbumo, Bruno Fernandes captain, Rice, Enzo, Wilson, Haaland, Thiago, with Dubravka, Mukiele, Krupi, Gay on the bench. I'd put Krupi Jr. above Mukiele in the pecking order. So that's the key change I would suggest. But in terms of the starting 11, no. I think that's exactly how I would do it. But just a minor tweak to the bench and you're all good. Enzo for a -4 or play Krupi. I'd play Krupi. Bomastico, not Bosmatico. Kino, Tarkovsky, or Mukiele. Who should I pick on the wild card? I already have Gabriel, Senesi, Chalobah, and Gay. Well, Mikolenko is a doubt, and that's why we saw Branthwaite, Tarkovsky, and Keane start simultaneously, but we could see Keane drop to the bench fairly soon. He's the least secure of the players you mentioned. So, in order to start this player in most game weeks, I would probably suggest Tarkovsky, but you've already got a reasonable amount of money spent on this position. So you've got no budget defender per se, and that's why I wouldn't mind Mukiele, despite Sunderland having some difficult fixtures on paper. So, interesting question, and in terms of Everton or Sunderland, I'd rather cover Everton defensively in most weeks, but I think you've already got a decent amount spent here, so I think Mukiele is the one. Bench 2 between Van Heck, Chow, Lacroix, Mukiele. I would bench Mukiele and probably Chow. I'd start Van Heck and Lacroix, which might sound odd, but I think that could work. Matt J. Friening says, Rufs, Gabriel, Timber, Van Heck, Rogers, Enzo, Semenyo, Bruno, Rice, Thiago, Haaland. Would you make any changes? One free transfer. I think the defense is the only weak link. So Gabriel and Timber are fine, but Van Heck I'm a bit unsure about. More so long term. I think for this week it's reasonable, but I think that's a good squad. Thiago to Joao Pedro could be considered. I don't know what money you have in the bank, but yeah. Apart from Van Heck, the rest looks quite solid. Hi, transfer out Leno and Rice for Raya and Semenyo for Gameweek 26. Already have and will have triple Arsenal, Gabriel and Timber. I still think Rice is a good option though. That's my only concern with this. As a duo, Raya and Semenyo is better. I'm not going to deny that, but what you could also do is keep Rice and sell Leno to Pickford or Roofs. I think that could also work just as well. And then it allows you to... Well, you've already got a triple up in Arsenal, right? You've got Gabriel and Timber. So, yeah, I would just keep Declan Rice and sell Leno to Pickford. Hi, Dylan. Start Cherky or Thiago? Thiago. Start one between Chow, Badiashile, or Van de Ven. Badiashile. Hey, Dylan. Thoughts on doing DCL and Minter to Mane and Enzo for a -4? Well, Minter's not a guaranteed starter. I've seen a few predicted lineups with him there, but I couldn't really say 100% that he will. And recently he's been a bench player. Calvert-Lewin's form is dipped. And whilst I'm not a massive fan of Mane, he doubles in 26, and it also gives you funds to buy Enzo Fernandez, I guess. Although there's not a massive difference in price between him and Minter in the first place. So what I'd recommend is, if you can do it for free, Minter to Enzo, and then next week you could just do DCL to Mane, but only if you're going to use those extra funds to reinvest in other positions like the midfield. Start Richards or Rodon? Probably Rodon here. NDEF94 says, hey Dylan, would you do Tarkovsky to Munoz? Probably not. Until I see improvement in Crystal Palace, I'd probably hold off for Munoz for now. I have Wilson and ideally wouldn't have a Fulham-Everton clash. Yeah, I get that, but it's a one-game thing and Tarkovsky is still quite solid when it comes to DEFCON and the odd clean sheet here and there. Hi Dylan, is Zubimendi a viable option as my third Arsenal player? It's a bit like Gravenberch, right? Very difficult to predict when he's going to return, but he is capable of some massive hauls, and we've seen that on plenty of occasions this season. So I think Zubimendi is an underrated pick, but when it comes to Arsenal, my favourite three would be Gabriel, Declan Rice, and Timber. In terms of the fourth option, instead of Timber, it's probably going to be David Raya in goal. Okay, so what I'm going to do here before going back to your questions is, well, go for some super chats and member stuff, and then go for some different graphics. So, Reece Dolan, thank you very much. He says, good evening, Dylan. It's good to see you. Paredes says, I own Financh. Still double up with Mbeumo. I don't mind having Mbeumo as a secondary option, but in my recent wildcard video, I highlighted Florian Wirtz, Declan Rice, Antoine Semenyo, Morgan Rogers, Harry Wilson, Elliot Anderson, Enzo Fernandez. So as you can see, there are plenty of choices in the midfield. So I don't think it's a bad thing to have a double up in the United attack for the next couple of weeks, but I certainly wouldn't double up on the defense, which I mentioned earlier, with someone who has Lamens and they wanted to buy Maguire. That's just not really on the cards for me, but Mbumo is certainly an enticing midfielder to buy. Thank you, Keith, for gifting membership. Massively appreciated. So Harris, enjoy it for an entire month. Early access to my videos, prior to comments, and yeah, Keith is the one to thank for that. I'll be gifting 10 towards the end of the stream, and we do have a super chat here by Nahal. He says, start 1, Keane, Lacroix, Nico to Hill, good transfer. I would start Keane, and yes, I think Nico O'Reilly, that is, I'm guessing, to Hill. It gives you funds, which is very important. The only thing I'd say about that is be a little bit careful about having two very cheap defenders. So that could be Alderete and Hill, because there might be a stage where mid-priced or even premium defenders start being a thing. And then we don't know who to choose between Gabriel, Timber, Van Dijk, Chalobah, Daniel Munoz, and Tarkowski. And you might want 2 or 3 of them. And that's where the lack of flexibility in the squad structure could come to cost you. And I talked about this in my wildcard video, but in isolation, I think Hill is a good FPL pick for the next couple of weeks, and Nico O'Reilly is worth selling, which I've highlighted for over a month now. Thank you, Mythic. Good to see you as well. I wouldn't start Dewsbury Hall over Haaland, but it's not unreasonable this week. So let's go to the FDR. And Arsenal are top until Game Week 30, but the double in 26 plays a massive part there. Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Liverpool, and Wolves are in the top 5. And if we look near the bottom, there is Tottenham Hotspur, Sunderland, Newcastle, Leeds, and Brighton. With predicted points until Game Week 30, Haaland, Gabriel, Rice, Fernandes, and Salah are in the top 5, with Ekitike, Timber, Thiago, Mbumo, and Semenyo completing the rest of the top 10. So let me know if you agree with these picks. And Haaland does go back to top. Fernandes has been number 1 for the last couple of weeks. With price prediction websites like livefpl.net, Chalobah, Somerville, Florian Wirtz, Semenyo, Saliba, and Cunha could all rise tonight. And in terms of price falls, Anthony Gordon, who will almost surely miss Game Week 25, but his injury is not too serious. O'Reilly, Cherky, Neto, Frimpong, Achimpong, and we've got a few other options here like Isidore and Hincapié. They could all go down in price, I should say, tonight, but it's not set in stone. And not much has changed here after a refresh. In terms of a poll I put out on my channel recently, I have to bench one of these players in Game Week 25, and you could also include Rodgers and Wilson in this debate. But Thiago has 64% of the vote, Haaland is second, Ekitike is third, and Declan Rice is last. So as you can see, not much has changed there, even with more votes counted. I made a stats comparison here of Wirtz and Semenyo, and both of them were talked about in detail in my best wildcard video. I think long-term Semenyo is probably the better pick, but I think this week I would favour Florian Wirtz in that direct matchup on Sunday. That should be very interesting, but Antoine Semenyo is the clear victor when it comes to goals, assists, shots on target, shots in the box, and XG. Where Wirtz does lead, though, is expected assists and key passes, but Semenyo does trump him in most of these stats. He's also had more minutes and starts, but both of them do have 22 appearances, and Semenyo was the clear talisman for Bournemouth earlier this season. Let's now go to FPL.team, one of the best websites you can use for your planning, and this is my provisional Double Gameweek 26 squad. And what I could end up doing is buying my third Arsenal asset in Jurriën Timber to replace Nico O'Reilly, and the alternative, or the move to fund that, would be Thiago to Mane, and that gives me 4 doublers for Double Gameweek 26, and a solid squad on paper. But moving forwards, I'd probably want someone like Joao Pedro or Igor Thiago back even to replace Mane, but that could change things a little bit for me. It also leaves me with 0.9 million in the bank, but Timber should rise in price. Well, he actually went up in price overnight, and O'Reilly could go down. And that was one of the projected price changes I showed you just a few minutes ago. So there could be another swing there, but I think it's probably best for me to wait and have more information. but I think getting Timber and Mane is the most likely for me right now going into 26. With the best wildcard squad, Pickford and Dubravka, Timber, Gabriel, Chalobah, all looks reasonable. You could go for Mane over Krupi Jr. short term, but I prefer the Bournemouth striker overall. Fernandes, Rice, Elliot Anderson and Enzo Fernandez looks very solid with Haaland, João Pedro, Florian Wirtz, Hill and Alderete, but there are other changes we could make here. So for example, instead of Wirtz, we can go for Antoine Semenyo, and Alderete to Mukiele also works reasonably well. And then you can go for Mane over Krupi Jr. and then start Antoine Semenyo this week against Liverpool away. And with the vice-captaincy, I would go to someone like Gabriel. To be honest, I think João Pedro would be the vice-captain with this wildcard squad. And with my budget, it'd be 0.5 million in the bank. But what about FPL Challenge? Well, this is what I've currently got. No changes from my team selection video. Raya in goal against Sunderland at home, and a double up in the Arsenal defence with Gabriel Magalhaes. I've got Daniel Munoz away to Brighton because this week the challenge is called Bragging Rights, so double points are awarded for Brighton and Crystal Palace players. You can pick 3 players per club with an unlimited budget, and that's why I've got Palmer and João Pedro as my captain, with Bruno Fernandes completing the set. So these are my team selection graphics, and it's going to make things very clear how I did in Gameweek 24, my transfer plans for the upcoming deadline, and I think over the whole week my plan has been to roll. And I don't see that really changing, so if anything, using my 2 free transfers in Double Gameweek 26 and buying Mane, Figo, Thiago and Timber to replace Nico O'Reilly, that's the most likely, but I still got a green arrow in Gameweek 24, despite it not looking great on paper. Only a handful of players returning, but some of them were massive returns, like the Ekitike brace and a 13-pointer. The prices have been very volatile recently. I've seen a few price increases overnight, like Gabriel to 7.1 million, and Jurriën Timber, who could be bought to replace Nico O'Reilly, and Ekitike to João Pedro is still on the cards, but I think Thiago to Mane is more likely right now. So you're going to see my provisional team selection here, and there is one major benching dilemma I've got. Let me know in the live chat right now. Would you bench Ekitike, Haaland, Wilson, Rodgers, Declan Rice, Enzo Fernandez, maybe even Igor Thiago? I think Bruno Fernandes is out of the equation for me. I'm not going to bench him whatsoever, but I think between the others, it is very close. Gabriel is currently my vice-captain. It's quite close between him and Enzo Fernandez, and you're going to see that in the top 10 Captaincy list very soon. But before I get to that, let's go through the scoreline predictions, which you haven't seen so far. Leeds 2, Nottingham Forest 1, Manchester United 2, Tottenham 1, and that would make it 4 wins in a row for the Red Devils. Arsenal 2, Sunderland 0, Bournemouth 1, Aston Villa 1, Burnley 2, West Ham 2, Fulham 1, Everton 1, Wolves 1, Chelsea 3, Newcastle 2, Brentford 1, Brighton 2, Crystal Palace 2, and Liverpool 1, Manchester City 0. So next up will be the team weakness and also the highlighted player this week, and I'm focusing on Wolves, so I am very bullish on Chelsea assets this week. Rotation could be the only concern, but I think João Pedro looks very enticing here against Wolves here, so I'm very confident he can produce some returns. With the clean sheet odds, Arsenal are top with a 62% probability against Sunderland, Fulham are second, and Chelsea are the only team in the top 6 who are away from home, and they've only got a 36% chance against bottom of the league Wolves. Manchester United, Leeds and Brighton complete the top 6, and Sunderland are bottom with an 11% chance of keeping a clean sheet at the Emirates. So the top 10 captains, it has been alluded to quite a lot in this stream, so nothing has changed from the team selection video yesterday. I've got Wilson 10th, Bowen 9th, and I've got Cunha in the top 8 with 2 more United players. Salah is 7th. I think Liverpool will win the game, but it's very close between him, Ekitike and Wirtz, I think, when it comes to deciding the best captain from the Premier League champions. Gabriel is 6th, facing Sunderland at home, and Enzo is 5th, but that is interchangeable, and I think with the vice, I might end up going for Gabriel instead. Mbeumo's 4th, Palmer is 3rd, and João Pedro is the closest rival to Bruno Fernandes, who once again is in that top spot for the captaincy. So before I go back to your questions and comments, what I want to do is highlight some predicted lineups. So Arsenal are up first, and they've got some promising fixtures, which is why they're top of the FDR for the next 6 game weeks. So David Raya would be in goal. He costs 5.9 million, and for the double game week coming up, that would be very, very promising. And by the way, I'll update this so you can see the doubles, because of course Arsenal do face Wolves away from home in game week 26. I think Timber will start over Ben White with Saliba, Gabriel, and Hincapié in that defensive line. I've gone for Zubimendi, Havertz, and Rice in the midfield, with Madueke and Trossard on the wings, and Gabriel Jesus up front. With Aston Villa, Emi Martinez, Cash, Konsa, Pau Torres, Matson, Douglas Luiz, Onana, Sancho, Rogers, Buendia, and Ollie Watkins, who remains doubtful, but his injury isn't seen as too serious. Next up is Bournemouth, who are facing, of course, Aston Villa. Petrovic, Smith, Hill, Senesi, Truffert, Cook, Scott, Jimenez, Krupi Jr., Adley, Anna Vanusson is my predicted Cherries 11. And with the Bees, I've gone for Kelleher, Coyote, Adja, Vandenberg and Henry, Yano and Yarmuluk, Dango Watara, Jensen, Lewis Potter to replace the suspended Kevin Schade and Igor Thiago up front. But I've got a few concerns here. Jordan Henderson could start in central midfield. There's also Collins at the back, Aaron Hickey at left back, and maybe even Damsgaard to replace Lewis Potter. But I've gone for this for Brentford. And with Brighton, Verbruggen, Kadioglu, Van Heck, Dunk, De Kuiper, Beliba, Pascal Grosch, Gomez, Rutter, Mitoma, and Welbeck. Ayari is going to be a big miss for the Seagulls against Crystal Palace at home. Next up is Burnley. I've gone for Dubravka, Twansebe, Esteve, Humphreys, Walker, and Lucas Perez, Ogochukwu, and Florentino Luis, Edwards and Anthony on the wings, and Broja up front. We're now on to Chelsea, who could rotate quite a bit, but I've gone for Sanchez, Gusto, Chalobah, Badiashile, Cucurella, Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, and Esteval over Pedro Neto, but that all depends on the Portuguese winger's fitness, and if he can overcome that knock, he could start against his former club. Palmer, Garnacho, and Joao Pedro is the most likely. With Crystal Palace, Henderson, Richards, Lacroix, Chadi Riyad, Wharton, who is back from suspension, Lerma, Munoz, Mitchell, Ismail Assar, Yeremi Pino, and new signing Jorgen Strand Larsen. That is my predicted 11 for Crystal Palace. And with the Toffees, Pickford, O'Brien, Tarkowski, Keane, and Branthwaite, Idrissa Gana Gay and Ghana, Armstrong, Dewsbury Hall, Indai, and Tierno Barry. With Fulham, Leno, Castagna, Anderson, Cuenca, Robinson, Iwobi, Sandenberg, Wilson, who is by far the best asset that Fulham have to offer, Smith Rowe, Samuel Chukwueze, and Raul Jimenez to lead the line. Leeds United are up next with Darlow, Bogle, Justin, Rodon, Strauch, and Goodmanson, Longstaff, Ampadu, and Aronson, Calvert-Lewin, and Okafor would be the two strikers, and Liverpool will likely go for a 4-2-3-1 comprising of Alisson, Szoboszlai, Kanate, Van Dijk, Kerkez, Gravenberch and McAllister, Salah, Wirtz, Gakpo, and Ekitike, who is currently on my bench. And with Man City, do we bench Erling Haaland this week? That is a big debate in the FPL community. Donnarumma, Nunez, Ruben Dias, Gay, Ait-Nouri, Rodri, Cherky, Reinders, O'Reilly, Semenyo, and Haaland is the most likely 11, but we could see O'Reilly at left back and then possibly Bernardo Silva if he's fit enough. I think he'd be very important at Anfield. And the likes of Phil Foden could also knock on the door, but I think City will go for this. Manchester United will likely go for Lamens, Dalot, Maguire, Lisandro Martinez and Shaw, Casemiro and Mainu in the midfield, Amad Diallo, Bruno Fernandes, who is now 9.7 million in FPL, Cunha, and Brian Mbeumo, who costs 8.5. Newcastle have one injury out in this predicted 11 in Bruno Guimaraes. I think he will make it into this 11 with Pope, Trippier, Chow, Burn and Hall, Tonali, Willock, Elanga, Visser, and Harvey Barnes. Anthony Gordon will miss the game against Brentford, but he could return for the matches against Tottenham and Man City. Nottingham Forest will likely go for Ortega Moreno. Between the sticks, they had a few goalkeeper injuries to John and Sells in the previous match day. Aina, Milenkovic, Murillo and Morato, with Nico Williams suspended, Sangare and Elliot Anderson in the midfield, Ndoye, Gibbs-White and Dominguez just behind Igor Jesus, and Hudson-Odoi is yet another doubt for Sean Dyche's men. Sunderland will likely go for Rufs, Mukiele, Ballard, Alderete, Renilo Mandava, Diarra and Siddiqui, Hume, Lefay, Talbi and Brobby, Granit Xhaka will be a notable absence there at the Emirates. Tottenham Hotspur could go for Vicario, Paulinho, Romero and Van de Ven in this back three, and the Dutchman has been cleared from injury, but Jed Spence remains doubtful. Yeah, I've got him in this predicted 11 with Pedro Porro set to miss out for the next couple of weeks. Gallagher, Pape Sarr and Udogie would be just behind Odegaard, Xavi Simons and Solanke, who has 4 goals over the past 4 matches. West Ham will go for Areola, Wan-Bissaka, Mavropanos and Kilman to replace the suspended Todibo. Diouf as the left back, Soucek and Fernandez with Pablo in the midfield, Bowen, Somerville and Tati Castellanos leading the front line. Last but not least is Wolves with Jose Sarr, Mosquera, Santiago Bueno and Krejci, who has been cleared from his injury, Joao Gomez, Andre and Mane in the midfield, Rodrigo Gomez and Hugo Bueno as the wing-backs, Tolu and Hwang Hee-chan would be the 2 strikers. So hopefully that has been very useful to you. I'll probably play it one more time later on, but without the commentary and highlighting the suspensions and the key bits of information there. But yeah, there's a lot to get through, of course, and that goes with your questions as well. So I'm going to do that for the next couple of minutes. Thank you to Ahmad for gifting 5 memberships. I'll also be doing that as well later on, primarily after the deadline is closed. So if we do hit the goal of 100 likes, we also hit the super chat goal, I will be gifting many more memberships as well. So I do appreciate that. A lot will bench Haaland. It must mean he will score. Yeah, that's how things can go sometimes, right? It is kind of insane. So to Saeed, Scalian, Sibs Forever, Wodge TFC, and Jack Sparrow. Well, not just you 5, but also 5 more because Ahmed has done a madness here, gifting 10 memberships in general. Thank you very much for the support here. So to Alib07, Ahmed Ben, to Demari, Regal Gamer, and your boy is Crazy. Yes, you might be crazy, but you're also a member of the channel, so enjoy. Thank you very much, Ahmed, and very soon 10 more of you will be joining them. So just keep your eyes peeled, and by the end of the deadline, we won't just have another deadline ticked off and something more to celebrate FPL-wise, but also early access to my videos, prior to comments, and all the perks can be found in the description. So you're going to see all the benefits of signing up as a member or patron. So big up to the community, and I'll be going through more questions now. Damari says bench Haaland. Well, at least you're not benching yourself because you are a member now. Congratulations. With Haaland, I don't think I'll bench him in the end, but it is a possibility. I'm not going to definitively rule it out. Thank you as well to Safair. And yes, Keith, it's always a pleasure seeing him for sure. And a big up to him for gifting a membership too. So let's see if I can whiz through the rest. So I'm going to go quite late on, as early as possible in this chat, and just whiz through these. So LVB0909 says, hey Dylan, which transfer would you do? Chow to Anderson or Szoboszlai to Wilson? Szoboszlai to Wilson. Which one to bench, Thiago, Haaland or Rodgers? Currently, the most likely to bench, to be on my bench is actually Thiago, but I'm not a big fan of that. Omara says maybe because I'm second in the mini league, 94 points behind. That's why I'm thinking Madueke, and you are right, Madueke will rotate. Arsenal even playing Wigan before the Wolves game. Yeah, I get that. Your mini league position and your sort of aims for the season can also influence your decisions, but you also just want to go for what you think is going to be the best course of action. And if you don't have that faith in Madueke to that level, I don't think it's worth buying him in. Now, sometimes we buy a low-owned differential as a punt, and it can work out brilliantly. So if you've got a gut feeling, you've got to back it. But I just think with Madueke, there is a degree of inconsistency there. And once Saka is back, which could be very soon, by the way, for Gameweek 27, Madueke is not going to be a consistent starter. Yeah, Timber is available. That's what Arteta said earlier. And I also covered the predicted lineups just now. So I believe he will start. It's not a guarantee, but I think Timber is in good shape. I have Bruno, Wilson, Rodgers, Rice and Semenyo, who to sell for Enzo. From those players, I'd probably sell Wilson reluctantly. I don't think you have to, though. Is selling Szoboszlai in draft mode to Madueke as a 2-week punt, which will lose me him long-term and mean I get Matoma or something after Saka is back, or is Szoboszlai worth holding? I'm tempted. The thing is with Szoboszlai, he's had a very good season, but with goals and assists, he hasn't had that many in the Premier League. He's been more impressive in the Champions League, in fact, where he's the highest scoring midfielder, if not second, and you're going to see that very soon. But yeah, I think I'd probably just keep Szoboszlai, to be fair. Hi Dylan, I've got Reece James in my squad. Should I stay with him or transfer into Chalobah or Cucurella? I'd probably transfer him to Chalobah. Welcome Mythic. Start Dewsbury over Haaland, not for me. Ahmad says trying to make benching decisions was too much of a headache this game, so just went with bench boost. That makes sense. I mean, I can't relate to that. So it's very difficult for me to bench one of my attackers, but with Dubravka, O'Reilly and Klein, the rest is crap. So I'm not really going to have the same conundrum as you or the same thought process. It's been a while, says Timmy. Good to see you. Steamer66 says, first sub, Gay or Tarkowski? Tarkowski. I would put Gay as far away from the starting 11 as possible. I think it'll be low scoring, but I'd be shocked if Liverpool don't score. Bench 1, Wilson, Sarr, Ekitike. I would bench Sarr. Louvru says, hi Dylan, hope you're doing well. Missing 0.1 for Bruno Guimaraes to Rice. I'm thinking to roll, so next week do that and maybe Virgil to someone like Senesi. And would you play Bruno Guimaraes this week instead of Krupi? Yeah, that makes sense to wait another week and not take a hit for Rice. That's probably what I'd suggest in your situation. In terms of Bruno Guimaraes or Krupi, it's close, but I would lean towards Krupi. Start Krupi or Munoz, it's going to be Krupi. Start Tarkowski or Garner, Tarkowski. I think both of them can get DEFCON, to be fair. Hey Dylan, for this week, who do you prefer out of the three? Wilson, Wirtz, Gibbs White. Harry Wilson, which is why he's 10th on my Captaincy list. Bench 1, I'm guessing that's Dewsbury Hall. Or Thiago, Rodgers or Enzo. I would bench Dewsbury Hall and Rodgers. Start Richards or Rodon. I'd start Rodon. Jordan Carr says, hey Dylan, start 1, Semenyo, Richards, Rodon. I would start Semenyo. And thank you, Keith, by the way, a man of your word. And we will get to 100 plus likes fairly soon as well. Rodgers to Rice, already have Wilson, Enzo, Semenyo, Garner. Because of Double Gameweek 26, I would say yes, but both of them have been off form recently. Rice has 4 consecutive blanks, and Rodgers has 2 returns out of the last 7 match days. Hi, Dylan, play Thiago or call Vertigo Lewin. Call Vertigo Lewin, what a name. I would play Thiago, but that's a very close one. -4 for Saka and Keane out to Mbumo and Timber. Yes. Start Chalobah or Senesi. Chalobah. I believe Timber will start. Not a guarantee though. Already own Fernandez, Rice and Wilson, says Dryhill. That's fair enough. I think the transfers are still quite solid. Saka could be back fairly soon, and Keane, I'd still back to start in Gameweek 25, but I think long term, Keane could drop to the bench. Dubravka or Pickford? Pickford. Semenyo for Rice. I like Semenyo still, but if you can do this for free, I would be tempted. I think Rice will outscore him this week and in Double Gameweek 26. Raid says, hi Dylan, have Ndai and Rodgers, and I want to transfer one out for either Rice or Enzo. I would sell Ndai to Rice. Shreya says, should I go Thiago to Joao Pedro for 3 weeks, then back to Thiago or roll? I'd do it and make that switcheroo, assuming that you're happy with the rest of your squad. That can make it more complicated if you've got a lot of fives to put out, but it looks reasonable. Who to bench? Wilson, Enzo, Cherky? I would bench Cherky. Who should I captain? Haaland, Bruno, Joao Pedro, Gabriel? For me, it's Bruno, but Joao Pedro is a close second. Is it okay to sell Ekitike to fund for Rice? Yes, it is. And I think Joao Pedro is a great replacement on paper. Mandip says, hi Dylan, would you do Saka plus Estev to Wirtz and Timber, or just Saka and Rice and play Estev? Already have Ryan Gabriel. Should I triple up on their defense? Cheers, mate. I like the Wirtz and Timber transfers, but I'm not as bullish on the triple up in the Arsenal defence as others are. Even when Arsenal weren't conceding goals or shots on target in October, I was still a bit apprehensive about it. I think 2 is probably enough. So my advice is just to do Saka to Rice and keep it simple. Start Dubravka or Riffs. Dubravka. Dorga to Hill, Goodmanson, Rodon, or other choices around 4.4 to 4.5. Thanks. Mukiele would be the main one, but you're not going to buy him this week against Arsenal away, in my opinion. So I think from the players you mentioned, it's probably going to be Hill for now. What do you think of me captaining Gabriel as a differential? I'm not against it. He's 6th in my Captaincy list and currently my vice-captain, so I think that's a great option. Sell Bruno Guimaraes for Enzo, / any other suggestions, or roll. Well, other suggestions would include Declan Rice, Morgan Rogers, Semenyo, Florian Wirtz, all of the players I discussed in my wildcard video and earlier today. But yeah, I think Enzo's fine, but Rice is the priority because of Double Gameweek 26. My defenders, Gabriel, Chao, Mukiele, Van de Ven, Dorgu. Better -4, Dorgu to Timber or Chalobah, or just roll Timber because of Double Gameweek 26. Now, is there a chance he's benched against either Sunderland at home or Wolves away? Yes, I'm not going to deny that. Bench one of Rice or Evanilson. I'd bench Evanilson. Bowen or Joao Pedro. Henderson from Palace as a possible keeper option. Not terrible, but I don't trust Palace defensively, so the only player I'd consider is Munoz, but he's also very expensive for what Palace are offering defensively. In terms of goalkeepers, I've been very consistent on this. Pick one of Pickford, Roofs or Raya. I think Sanchez is the fourth best option, and the rest I wouldn't really go for right now. Ollie says, worth transferring O'Reilly for a cheaper defender this week for a -4, thinking about Anderson or maybe Jimenez from Bournemouth. Cheap and a differential, and plays as a winger. I'd still go for Hill if you want to cover Bournemouth defensively, and I think Senesi is going to offer the most points in that Cherries defence, but I understand that, and Jimenez is in my predicted lineup as a right winger / right midfielder, so I think that's a reasonable shout, but not for a -4. I don't think it's worth selling O'Reilly to Jimenez for that. MMK says Haaland is most likely a bench for now if we don't get any updates before the deadline. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. Yeah, I think you're not the only one. I'm considering it myself, but I don't think I'll end up doing it. Hi Dylan, hope you're doing well. Missing 0.1 for Brunningham Rush to Rice. I did cover this already. Would you sell Semenya for Mbuma or Enzo? Probably not. And also, would you do Evanilson or Thiago to Joao Pedro? I'd sell Evanilson to Joao Pedro. Which one to bench, Thiago, Haaland or Rodgers? It's most likely that I'd bench Thiago from those three. I'm in a very similar situation, and you're going to see what I end up doing, but I've also got a few other players who could be fitted into that conversation, like Wilson and Ekatike. Tarkowski or Senesi, who to start? Tarkowski. Bench Rodgers or Joachim Andersen? I'd bench Joachim Andersen. Hello, hope you're doing well. Should I captain Enzo or Gabriel? Well, I've got Enzo 5th and Gabriel 6th in my Captaincy list. It's very close between them. I've currently got Gabriel vice-captain, and to be quite honest with you, I've got this thing where my vice-captain can sometimes outscore my captain, so I'm also trying to give Gabriel and Arsenal some positive energy, which is why I've got him as my vice, which might sound ridiculous, but that's the honest truth. I think it's very close between them. I think Enzo will start. His ceiling is probably higher, and I would lean towards Enzo ever so slightly. Cheers, Haribo. Hi, Dylan. I could go DCL to Pedro and Rodgers to Wilson / Anderson and die for a -4, or Watkins to Pedro for free, or roll with a horrible bench. Any advice? I think all of those are plausible, and they all have their merit, but I think overall what I'd end up suggesting is Watkins to Pedro as a short-term punt, and then that could become Thiago from Gameweek 27 onwards. But let me know what you're sort of leaning towards, because there is no clear solution there, but I think that's what I'd end up doing. Yes, I think Haaland will start. You saw my lineups earlier, and if not, you can feel free to rewind. Dylan to start Sanchez or Dubravka? Sanchez. Thoughts on doing DCL Minter to Mane and Enzo for a -4? Yes, I would say yes. I'm not a massive fan of Mane, but I might end up going there myself to fund Jurien Timber in 26. Start Richards or Krupi? Krupi. Bench one of Evanilson or Rice? I'd bench Evanilson. Thank you, Ali B. I think the people to thank is probably Ahmad. Yeah, he was the one who gifted 5 memberships, so yeah, he's the one. Joao Pedro or Gabriel? Joao Pedro. Hi, Chao, Dallo, Thiago, bench 1. I'd bench Dallo. Is okay to sell Ekatike to fund for Rice, as covered earlier? Yes. Bench 1, Gabriel, Timber, Chalobah, Tarkowski, Chow. I would bench Chow. Justin Nicholas says, hi Dylan, start Cherky or Thiago? Thiago, and yeah, this question was also covered. Badiashile was the answer. Rodgers to Rice. It's a yes for me. I like Rodgers, but Rice is an upgrade for the next 2-3 weeks at least. Which one is better, Van de Ven or Nunes, or -4 for Timber? The better option is Van de Ven. I wouldn't take it for Timber. Pickford or Dubravka? Pickford. Should I buy Cucurella or Chalobah? As mentioned earlier, Chalobah. Hi Dylan, bench 1, Dewsbury Hall, Thiago, Rodgers. I would bench Dewsbury Hall. Equal Thiago to Pedro for a -4? No. El Padrino, good to see you. Is it okay to sell Ekitike to fund for Rice? Yeah, you've asked that quite a lot, mate. Duarte says, Raya, Dubravka, Anderson, Gabriel, Chalobah, Richards, Rodon, Rice, Enzo, Bruno Fernandes, Wilson, Anderson, Ekitike, Thiago, Haaland. One free transfer. Should I roll or would you make any move? Would you go Ekitike to Joao Pedro? I think with your situation, I would just roll because you've got squad depth and a few benching dilemmas already. I'm in a similar boat, which is why I'm quite keen on rolling. Who to sell Gordon to? I have 7.9 million. Declan Rice. Gabriel Timber covered. Captain Mbeumo or Bowen? It would be Mbeumo. Both of them are in my top 10 list. Bowen is 9th and Mbeumo is 4th. KS259 says, Hi Dylan, hope you're well, mate. I have Bruno Guimaraes in my team. Would you hold or sell? Probably a hold, but it also depends on your other midfielders. But this was covered in my Transdits video a few days ago. Also have Munoz, has some good fixtures coming up, but would you sell to Timber for an Arsenal triple up? Yes. The thing is, if you've already got 2 Arsenal defenders or Raya in goal, then I wouldn't say you shouldn't do it, but that'd put me off a little bit, personally. I think 2 is probably the sweet spot when it comes to covering the Arsenal defence, and the third option would be Declan Rice in the midfield. Quick one for Gameweek 25. Is it worth a -4 to bin Shada and bring in Enzo or Rice? Yes, it is. Because Shada will also miss the Arsenal game in 26, and Rice will double there. Enzo Fernandez has great fixtures. Short term, I'd go to Declan Rice. I'm currently running a 4-3-3 with Joao Pedro and Krupi up front. If I don't take the hit, I'm stuck starting Joe Rodon. I think Leeds could keep a clean sheet tonight. I've gone for 2-1, but it wouldn't surprise me if they kept Forest out. But I think in your situation, sell Shada to Rice, even for a hit. Should I use the wildcard or free it this week? Very team-dependent question, Mohammed. I don't know your squad, which makes this impossible to answer, but I'd be more inclined to use the wildcard in many situations. Pickford, Timber, Gabriel, Van Heck, Bruno, Enzo, Guimaraes, Rodgers, Haaland, Thiago, Vanason rate my team. Took a -4 for Timber. Pretty solid. I'd say 7.5. Vanason and Van Heck let it down a little bit. And with Bruno Guimaraes, we don't know if he's available, but if he's fit, I think he's a very good long-term option, so that could rise a little bit. I have Mbeumo, but should I change to Cunha? No. Hello, Dylan. Sell Thiago to Joao Pedro. For free, yes. It would be a short-term punt, though, and I think from Gameweek 27 until the end of the season, Thiago would go back to being the better option. Would you start Mukiele, Senesi, or Munoz? I would start Munoz. Should I do Rodgers to Rice and bring Rodgers back around 28? Yeah, that sounds fine, and by then you might not want him back. Do you think Liverpool will win? Yes, I do. 1-0. Captaincy poll? I can do that fairly soon. Is it a bad move to wildcard this week? It depends on the situation. I think Gameweek 24 was highlighted by many people. Obviously, we're in 25 now. Not much has really changed compared to that window. But of course, we now know who doubles in 26, but I wouldn't wildcard with Double Gameweek 26 as the main factor or reason. I think the sort of primary motivator should be injury, suspensions, and having a lot of fires to put out and making a wholesale changes. We're talking about 7 or more. Henry Stemmer says, I have Gabriel, Chow, Keane, Dorgo, Mukiele in defense, and also Saka, which I probably need to sell. I am planning to do Saka to Mbeumo. Should I also do Dorgo to Timber for a -4? Yes, I would. And with Arsenal doubling in 26 and with Mbeumo having a high ceiling, I think that justifies the -4. Duarte says, hey Dylan, 1 free transfer. Should I do Ekitike to Joao Pedro? I don't mind that move, but you highlight your team earlier, and I don't think you need to make a transfer this week. And I think by 27 or 28, people will want Thiago back, or at least he looks more appealing than Joao Pedro by then. Hi Dylan, thoughts on my wildcard draft? Says Luca. So could do Thiago and Anderson to Krupi and Wirtz. Not a bad idea. I think both duos are reasonable, but what you've gone for is sound. I do like it. I just think long-term, Ruff's, Pickford and Raya are better than Sanchez, but it's the cheapest way of covering Chelsea defensively. Not many complaints from me. I do like your squad. You will have benching headaches, particularly with the midfield, but yeah, it's a very well thought out team. I like the look of it. Pickford or Dubravka? Pickford. Dubravka or Verbruggen? This is a close one, but probably Verbruggen. Van Heck or Chow? Van Heck. That one has been covered a few times. Sell Bruno Guimaraes for Enzo. Any other suggestions or roll? Yeah, I said Declan Rice is my favourite midfielder to buy right now in terms of double game at 26, but Enzo's fine. Would you take a -4 to take out Gordon or play Mane Gay? I'd take a -4. and I think Rice would be perfectly reasonable. Hi Dylan, good luck, and just want to check if I should transfer Rodgers or Ndiaye for Rice or Enzo. Yeah, I did cover your question earlier, so I would sell Ndiaye for Rice. If you decide to buy Enzo, that's still fine, but I just think with Rice doubling in 26, and I think his ceiling will be quite high over the next couple, even against Tottenham and Chelsea. Yeah, I think Rice is a good transfer. Start Verbruggen or Kelleher? I would start Verbruggen. Hi Dylan, bench 1 from Rice, Wilson, Evanussen, Rodgers, Enzo, Evanussen. Captain in the early game? It's not like FPL. You can't captain one player today and then one tomorrow and one on Sunday. But if you really wanted a Friday captain, probably Calvert-Lewin. Start Nunes or Van Dijk? Oh, by the way, just to go back on this, I'm guessing you're saying, wait, you're captaining Bruno tomorrow, so early kickoff curse. In that case, fair enough. Yeah, I didn't really think about that too much, but it is what it is, right? I think Bruno is still a good pick. Yeah, with this one, Van Dijk, I've gone for 1-0 Liverpool. I think City won't keep a clean sheet. Phil Barca says, I have 2 free transfers. Should I go Haaland for Ekitike? Already have Joao Pedro and Gator Timber or roll. If I roll, should I start Haaland or Krupi? I wouldn't sell Haaland to Ekitike. I think Gator Timber is the best move you can make. And in terms of Haaland or Krupi, still Haaland. Reese says, need to go against Bruno captain this week. Possibly. If I had Joao Pedro, I'd be very tempted to go there. In terms of my squad, Gabriel and Enzo would be the most likely to take the armband from Bruno. Palmer or Wirtz captain? Palmer. Bench 1, Chow, Dallo, Keane. I'd bench Dallo. Morpheus says, so I have Bowen, Thiago, Haaland. Would it be smart to captain Bowen? Well, I've gone for 2-2 in that game. Bowen is 9th on my captaincy list. I think it's a reasonable pick, but he's not my favourite. I have Rice, Bruno Fernandes, Rodgers and Potts. Yeah, Potts is the one to sell. The rest are fine. Dubravka or Donnarumma this week? Dubravka. Rodgers or Bruno Guimaraes? Rodgers this week. Yeah, I know Punjabi, but I don't think there is a right move per se. I think benching any of these attackers could lead to pain. Van Hecke or Chow? Van Hecke this week. Hi, bench 1 of Evanussen or Dallo? I'd bench Dallo. The other option is to take a -4 to upgrade Guiu to Joao Pedro or Thiago and bench both. I just start Evanussen. Wilson over Ekitike, why? Well, Wilson has been very consistent over the last 11 game weeks, and Ekitike has had some dry periods over the past month. There's also the fixture question where Wilson has a more appealing game on paper against Everton at home compared to Ekitike facing Man City. And with Liverpool, they have more options, more routes to points. They can have Salah scoring, Gakpo, Wirtz, even Szoboszlai. I think with Fulham, Wilson is the most likely or second most likely goal scorer and their top assister. So I think Wilson is a reasonable shout. Senesi or Anderson? Anderson. Have Bruno, Ekitike, Wirtz, do a -4 for Thiago, Cherki, Anderson, Pedro, Enzo, Hill. I'm going to say yes. I would do that -4 hit. Igor Thiago out for Joao Pedro for a -4? No. Start Verbruggen or Dubravka? I would start Verbruggen and I would bench Van Dijk. The thing is, I have gone for 1-0 in my prediction, so based on that, I think Van Dijk would be the logical player to start. So it's a very close one. Semenyo's ceiling is higher in this fixture, but it would not surprise me to see Van Dijk get 6 to 8 points. Based on my scoreline prediction, I'm going to say Van Dijk, but it's an unpopular opinion. I'm just going to put that out there. If you need captain against Bruno, who would be your top 3 differentials? Gabriel, Enzo Fernandez, and Palmer. Start Bruno Guimaraes or Senesi? Bruno Guimaraes. Van Hecke or Chow? This has been covered repeatedly. And thank you to Punjabi and other moderators. Should I use the wildcard or Freer this week? I've covered that, mate. Thank you. Dubravka or Pickford? Pickford, also covered. Captain. We're getting a lot of captaincy questions, and I have gone through that. And we do have over an hour left, so very soon what I'll probably do is go through some different screens again, and that will in turn answer a lot of these questions. But Yeah, from those players you've mentioned, my favourite captain is Gabriel. Who would you buy for Richards? I have Timber, Anderson, Mukiele, Van den Berg, and 1.2 million in the bank. Do you think triple up on Arsenal is essential for the double? Not essential, but it's recommended. I think 2 or 3 is what you want. I think if you have 1 or none, that'd be a bit concerning. But yeah, it's not essential. I think 2 is what I'd definitely recommend, and having a 3rd is a bonus. In terms of who to buy for Richards, I would say Gabriel. I know you've only got 1.2 in the bank, but what I'd consider in your situation is downgrade somebody else. That could be Ekitike to Joao Pedro this week for free, and then buy Gabriel next week to replace Richards. Mayor says, big headache between Thiago and Haaland. Same here. Thiago against a weak Newcastle defence, and Haaland can also score again, but not confident in the Liverpool defence. The thing is, Liverpool have the best underlying numbers defensively over the last 7 game weeks, so that's an interesting one. In terms of XGC, expected goals conceded, and Arsenal have dropped off a little bit over the past 2 months, but yeah, I think Haaland is up against a decent Liverpool side who can set up quite well defensively in the big games. Against Real Madrid, we saw that. Arsenal across both matches, no goals conceded. Yes, against City away, that was a different story, but I think Liverpool could keep out City this time. Hi, Dylan. Start Cherki or Thiago? Thiago. Start one between Chao, Badiashile, Van de Ven. Yeah, this has been covered a lot, I think. Badiashile is my answer again. Hey, Dylan. Benching conundrums this week. Bench Gay or Richards and Calvert-Lewin or Evanilson? I would bench Gay. The other one is very close between Calvert-Lewin and Evanilson. I would lean towards... I think I'd go for Evanilson just about, which is unpopular as well, but both of them could return this week. Yes, DNN. I would take the -4 hit to sell Gordon. I don't know what else I can really say to that. So I'm just going to skip the questions I've already answered for the sake of repetition. So let's see what else we've got. Yeah, Zach, my answer would be yes. Heated Gaming 23 says, hello, Dylan and chat. My team is Raya, Gabriel, Tarkowski, Mukiele, Bruno Guimaraes, Rogers, Vert, Semenyo, Haaland, Ekitike, Thiago, with Anderson, Rio, Klein on the bench, and an NPC goalkeeper. I got 0.5 million in the bank and 4 free transfers. Any advice? So this situation is different. You've got a lot of available moves, so you could use 1 or 2 of them here, but I wouldn't use all of them simultaneously. You've got Joachim Anderson on the bench, who is going to be a star for most people. So, yeah, I think start Anderson over Mukiele. I think that's very clear. In terms of transfers, I think a 3rd Arsenal player would be on the cards, so Rice in the midfield would be quite appealing. So something I'd look at is Ekitike to Joao Pedro and then upgrading Rio to Rice. I think that could work for you, but even those 2 transfers alone might not be enough to get what you're looking for. So something else could even be buying Mane, which isn't amazing on paper, but he doubles in 26. He gives you the funds to buy Rice and make some other big upgrades in the midfield. And yeah, you don't have Bruno Fernandes, which I'd really recommend to you. And that could also be your priority over Declan Rice, actually. So that's going to be my suggestion, or my suggestions for transfers for Gameweek 25 and 26. Hi, Dylan. Start Raya Verbruggen, Thiago, Buendia. Raya and Thiago. Thank you, Pretty. Good content. Donnarumma or Dubravka? Dubravka. DCL, Garner or Rogers this game week? Choose 2 out of the 3. Difficult, but I'd probably bench Garner, who ironically is the most likely to give you something in terms of 4 points or above. So his floor is the highest, and I just think the others are more likely to score. Hey Dylan, hope you're doing well. This is my last week of patience with Parma. Options you would suggest for replacements that give me credit to also replace either Senesi or Richards in defence. Well, anyone you buy would give you more money, except for Salah. Apart from Fernandes, who is the obvious pick, I would say Declan Rice would be a good replacement for him, and you could use those funds to, replace Richards, I think, and then go to Gabriel, Timber, and these defenders I've highlighted today. Thank you, Trix. Morpheus says, I'm at 1,426 points at the moment, and I have Bowen, Thiago, Haaland. Yeah, look, that's a good amount of points. In terms of captaincy, Bowen is ninth, but I can't really say too much more on that. I think there are 8 better options at least, and yeah, West Ham are so inconsistent. I've gone for 2-2 in my scoreline prediction, but would it surprise me if they didn't score against Burnley? Not really. And it wouldn't surprise me if Bowen blanked, but yeah, the player himself is consistent, all things considered, but the team isn't, and I think there is an element of unpredictability when it comes to the captaincy with Bowen because of West Ham and how unreliable they are. Start Virgil, Dallo, Goodmanson, Enzo Lefebvre, Dewsbury, any two. I would start Van Dijk and probably Dewsbury Hall. My defenders, Gabriel, Chal, Mukiele, Van der Ven, Dorgu, better -4, Dorgu to Timber, Chalobah. Yeah, Twine, as covered earlier, I would take the hit and buy Timber. Kelleher or Petrovic? Probably Kelleher. Hi, my team is Rice, Semenyo, Enzo, Fernandez, Gordon, Hallen, Ekitike, Calvert-Lewin. Want to get Pedro, but it'd be for a -4. Is it worth Gordon and Calvert-Lewin to Pedro and Casemiro or Somerville, then Benchu? Casemiro's been in good form recently, but I wouldn't take a hit for him. Somerville as well has been scoring quite a few goals, but no, not for me. I don't think I'd take a hit for that. Because then you have a benching dilemma. If anything, I think just selling Gordon for free is the way to go. But you're trying to find a way to buy Joao Pedro, which is why you're talking about -4 hits. Hi Dylan, please bench 1 Dewsbury Hall, Thiago, Rogers. I would bench Dewsbury Hall as covered earlier. FPL Kevy, good to see you. And likewise, my only question is, should I start Pedro Neto or Thiago? I'd start Thiago. Had Neto starting, but don't trust Rosenor, and he said Neto might not be ready. Yeah, it's still going to be Thiago for me. But I get the concern, and in my predicted lineups, one of my main debates was Esteval versus Pedro Neto on the right. Hey Dylan, is Joao Pedro Enzo the best option? Joao Pedro on current form. Hi Dylan, bench Wilson or Thiago? It's more likely I'd bench Thiago right now, but the algorithms are suggesting benching Wilson or Rogers in my case, but I'm quite keen on starting Thiago. I think Pep is bluffing about Haaland Pep games. He was just rested midweek because of a comfortable lead from the first leg. Yeah, I think Haaland will start, despite Marmoush scoring in 2 starts recently against Wolves and Newcastle. But still, in FPL terms, I think Haaland could be a bench this week in terms of he's not... I don't think he's going to return big against Liverpool, and maybe that'll age horribly. He did miss a penalty against them earlier this season in a 3-0 win. He scored, but only got 4 points. Yeah, I think benching Haaland is viable in 25. Ahmed says, hi Dylan. 0.8 in the bank, who to start and sell? Okay, so Rye goes without saying. I would also go for Gabriel. Goodmanson in the lineup. Lewis Potter could start, but it's not guaranteed against Newcastle. I think what I would recommend is a defender transfer. And that's where Chalobah could come into play. But he would have to come in for Lewis Potter, I think. Lewis Potter to Chalobah, if he can. Yeah, and then start Chalobah, Goodmanson and Gabriel defensively. Rogers, Wilson, Enzo, Fernandez, and Bruno. Haaland up front with Thiago. I'd start Thiago. And Calvert-Lewin. So then your main benching dilemma would be, do I bench Semenyo or Calvert-Lewin or Thiago? Which is fair enough, but I would make a defender move there, Ahmed, and buy Chalobah. Bench DCL or Wilson? I would bench DCL. Thiago, Semenyo or Anderson to bench, says Ennis. Yeah, from those 3 players, it's going to be Joachim Anderson. Thank you, Mina, and I also reciprocate what you're saying there. Hi, Dylan. Good to see you as always. Who would you start, O'Reilly or Alderete? Yeah, I think both will blank. O'Reilly's got more attacking threat, but Alderete's more likely to get DEFCON. And in terms of the clean sheet, I know Sunderland are bottom. But yeah, I think I'd personally go for Alderete, but ideally you'd make a defender transfer and upgrade that a little bit. Start Wilson or Rogers. Very close one. They both have the same expected points according to Fantasy Football Hub, which you would have seen earlier. I prefer Wilson a little bit more. Yeah, just about. How's it going, Dylan? Would you do Cherky to Rice this week to bench Chow? Yes, I would. And all good here. Hopefully you're doing well too. Hey Dylan, play Szoboszlai Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin. Should I bring in Mbumo and bench Rice or just start Rice? Just start Rice. Rodgers over Ekitike is crazy, not going to lie. Biased Liverpool fan here, but still. I just think any player I bench is going to be crazy because they can all return. And this is not set in stone. I've still got just under an hour to make a tweak. In terms of captaincy and vice, there could be a change there. Transfers is less likely. And with my benching dilemma, I think it's all to play for. So yeah, I can understand why people are a bit hesitant about me benching Ekitike. Anish says, hey Dylan, Kelleher, Gabriel, Chalobah, Munoz, Wirtz, Enzo, Rice, Bruno as the captain, Mbumo, Thiago, Haaland, and on the bench, Rufs, Timber, Mukiele, Krupi. I'd probably start Timber over Munoz. I think Brighton will score against Palace, and Arsenal have the best chance of a clean sheet this week. I think Kelleher over Rufs is actually the right call. And yeah, the rest speaks for itself. It's a decent squad. And you could buy Rice for Double Gameweek 26 to triple up on Arsenal. And that's where you could sell Wirtz temporarily. And actually, you got Rice already. What am I saying? I think you're fine then. I think you're absolutely fine. But I would start Timber over Daniel Munoz. There are other midfielders you might want, like Antoine Semenyo, Cole Palmer. But there's no pressing need there. So it's really just the case if you're starting 11. You've already got the triple up in Arsenal, which is the most important for 26. Wolves players are not really needed, even Mane. Good night, Barath, and good luck as well to Keith and everyone else. Play Senesi or Rodgers? I would play Rodgers. Start Cash or Senesi? Probably Senesi from these two. I think both will concede, and then Senesi's more likely to get something. I bought Enzo and Timber for Rice and O'Reilly for a hit. I like the players you're buying in, not the fact you've sold Rice for a hit, but there you go. Hi, bench one of Ivanosen or Dallo. I did cover your question earlier, Payman Armin, and my answer was to just start Ivanosen, don't take a hit, and bench Dallo. What do you think about captaining Ekitike, or should I just captain Joao Pedro? I wouldn't captain Ekitike. I think Joao Pedro is a better captaincy choice, yeah. Will Bruno Guimaraes start? Not a guarantee, but in my predicted lineup, yes, I have gone for him. Ahmed says, from these players, Raya, Gay, Mukiele, Rodgers, who to start? I did answer this as well. I did. I literally just went for it a minute or two ago. I said Raya, Gabriel, Goodmanson. Yeah, I went through this quite extensively just now. Dylan, was Hincapié in your predicted squad? Yes, he was. I left back. Thiago or Calvert-Lewin? Thiago. All right, let me just go for some new questions. Wilson or Elliot Anderson? It's close, but I'd go for Wilson. Bench one of Thiago, Ekitike, Haaland, Wilson. I've currently got Ekitike on the bench, but I'm not happy with it. Hi Dylan, which one to start? Dewsbury Hall or Igor Thiago? I'd rather start Thiago. Yeah, you got Chow in the 11, but it doesn't change my mind. Start Elliot Anderson or Igor Thiago? Thiago. Hi Dylan, I have 2 free transfers. Do you think Ekitike to Joao Pedro is worth it? I could then also in the future possibly go from Wilson Anderson to Wirtz or someone else. Yeah, it's worth it. And whilst I like Wilson and Anderson, I think stretching one of them out to an Mbumo, Wirtz, and Enzo Fernandez could also help you in the long term. Frosty says, rate my team. There are some good things there. You've got a lot of differentials in there. I'd probably say a 6, maybe a... I mean, I'll say the next number. You know the next number. The one just below an 8, if we're rounding up. But yeah, the reason why I say a 6 is because Gibbs White, not very consistent this season. You've got no Arsenal players at all, and they've got a double in 26. You've got Solanke, who's in good form, but he's up against United next. I mean, look, some of these picks are doing well recently. Even Xavi Simons has had his moments, but 2 Spurs attackers, Areola's your goalkeeper, 2 Chelsea defenders. I think 1 is probably enough, and you'd rather double up on the attack. You've got Palmer there as your captain, which could be very enticing. Bruno Fernandes, but if I'm looking a bit bigger picture, I think there are a few problems in the team. Hey Dylan, benching conundrums this week. Bench Gay or Richards and Calvert-Lewin or Ivanosen. I did cover this Yeah. I'd bench Gay and probably Calvert-Lewin. But I'm quite conflicted about the striker question. Start Van Dijk or Chalobah. I'd still start Chalobah, but it's a very close one. To be fair, both Liverpool and C have been shaking defence. I'm going for 1-1 or 2-2. I get that. I just think Liverpool have been decent defensively in a lot of big games this season. Not all of them, but in quite a few, particularly at Anfield. Chow or Anderson? Joachim Anderson. Hill or Klein? Hill. Would you start Rodon or Senesi? I would start Rodon. I've benched Thiago. I want to play Wilson, Ekitike, Haaland. Am I an idiot? No. I just think it's a tough benching dilemma. Welcome to Stupaki. Start 1, Thiago, Anderson, Krupi. I'd start Thiago. Alfie says Gay, Senesi or Cash. I would start Senesi. Gay or Chow? Chow for me. Is Somerville a good pick? Yeah, he's done well recently. As a fifth midfielder, short-term punt, he's fine, but I think Garner, Elliot Anderson and Wilson are better. Free hit this week. Timber's not injured. There's a chance he's rested, but I think he'll start. And with the free hit, I'd rather save it for a blank or double later in the season. Who to check out Xavi for, but for who? Depends on your budget, but Enzo Fernandez would be one. Yeah. Depends who you have already, which you mentioned in your previous comment. Is that a free hit team? Yeah, I think I would still change quite a few of these and put one or two Arsenal players in there, for example. Yeah, Xavi Simons out for Enzo, and then not double up on the Chelsea defence. That would be one suggestion for you. Thank you, Ahmad. João Pedro hat-trick, 5 out of 5 unlocked. Thank you very much for that, Ahmad, and for all the memberships you've gifted. I think João Pedro could get a big return, but not a hat-trick. That's what I will say, but let's wait and see. I meant I sold Saka and O'Reilly, not Rice and O'Reilly. Fair enough, Danny. Looks fine. Hi, Dylan. Should I bench Ekitike or Sarr? I'd bench Sarr. Might punt on Strand Larsen next week, in for Thiago for his 2 fixtures against Burnley, Wolves at home. Could go awful, but would be fun. I would back Strand Larsen to score against Wolves there. That's a good shout. Dylan, you know this is the first time I'm going against you and I'm benching Thiago instead of Ekitike. Well, once again, I have to make this clear. I haven't fully decided this yet. I don't like benching Ekitike, nor would I like benching Thiago or Wilson or anybody else in my attack, but I have to do it. If not, I sell one of them, but it's still going to be the same process. Rodgers or Wirtz to start? Rodgers. The only Wolves asset I'd consider is Mane as a budget forward. Play Goodmanson, Chow or Van Heck? Goodmanson. Buy Semenyo, Sarr or Wilson? If I were to buy one, it's going to be Semenyo long term. Dallo or Anderson? Joachim Anderson. Anderson or Tarkowski? It's very close, but I would favour Tarkowski. Hey Dylan, Krupi over Garner? Yes. Senesi or Lacroix? Very close, but I would favour Lacroix. The update on Saka is that it's not a serious injury. He could be back fairly soon. Odegaard, for example, should be back in a matter of days, and Timber is available. That's what Arteta said earlier. So I'll give you the exact quote on Saka, because I did see it this morning. It's probably worth showing it on screen as well. So let's do that. And I'm going to go for some different screens too. So if you haven't done so already, drop a like on this stream, subscribe to the channel. I've answered hundreds of questions already and gone through a lot of pieces of information, news, data, so you're well prepared for Gameweek 25 and beyond. This is the update that Arteta provided today. Bakayu's hip is getting much better, so hopefully very soon he will be with us. Very soon, very soon. Martin Odegaard again is getting better. It will be a matter of days, we believe, and Jiren Timber is fine. So some positive updates there for Arsenal. And yeah, a very, well, I'd say unexpected good news on Odegaard and Saka in particular. Let's now go to a few different screens like the FDR. So Spurs, Sunderland, Newcastle, Leeds and Brighton are in the bottom 5. And if we go to the top teams here, Arsenal are number 1 with Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Liverpool and Wolves. Erling Haaland is the go-to FPL asset, apparently, according to predicted points, until Gameweek 30. Gabriel, Rice, Fernandes, Salah, Ekitike, Timber, Thiago, Mbeumo and Semenyo are in the top 10. With projected price changes, we could see Chalobah, Wirtz, Somerville, Semenyo, Cunha, Saliba, Enzo, Cucurella and Anderson from Nottingham Forest rise tonight. And in terms of price fallers, O'Reilly, Gordon, Cherky, Brobby, Pedro Neto, Frimpong, Isidore, Achimpong, Tavernier, Minter could all go down. The same goes for Nichols, and not Hincapié, like I said earlier, Mikel Merino and Meslier. But not all of these will happen. With a poll I put out on my channel, you could also include Rodgers and Wilson in this debate. Thiago is the leading vote, so most of you think I should bench him. In second place is Haaland, Ekitike is third, and Rice is last. I did a stats comparison earlier of Wirtz and Semenyo. I think long-term Semenyo is the better pick, but Wirtz has been in great form recently across all competitions, with 6 goals out of the last 10 matches, but in every single stat, except key passes and XA, which is expected assists, Antoine Semenyo is the clear victor. So this is my current plan for Double Gameweek 26. Roll this week, and then with 2 free transfers, I can buy Timber to replace Nico O'Reilly, and to fund that move, Igor Thiago would make way for Mane, and it would leave me with 0.9 million in the bank. And then moving forwards, that's where I could start a Wilson over Mane, and I wouldn't really have any benching dilemmas per se. But that's where things would get interesting. Triple up on Arsenal, and they would face Tottenham and Chelsea back-to-back. But yeah, that would look fairly decent. I'd probably put Anderson first on the bench as well. That's looking really far ahead, of course, to Gameweek 27, but it's good to have a plan. And that is currently what I'm looking at, to have 4 Double Gameweek 26 doublers for the other deadline coming up, not this one. So, with the best wildcard squad, this is what I kind of came up with, and these are a few adjustments to what I showed you the other day, but it's still very similar. I think Krupi's better than Mane, but we've got Double Gameweek 26 in Mane, I should say, not Gobble. I think Mane could make sense as your third forward and 8th attacker, and Semenyo versus Wirtz is another close debate, but that's what I've gone for right now. And with FPL Challenge, I'll go to this after the deadline has passed, but I've gone for Raya, Gabriel, Munoz, Palmer, Bruno Fernandes and Joao Pedro captain. The only reason I've got Munoz here is because this week the challenge is called Bragging Rights, so double points are awarded for Brighton and Crystal Palace players, but that's only for FPL Challenge, not for Fantasy Premier League. Let's now go to a stats comparison. Well, scoreline predictions, I should say. Leeds 2, Nottingham Forest 1 for tonight's game. In the early kickoff tomorrow, Manchester United 2, Tottenham 1, and I will put a poll out, by the way, for the captaincy in the next couple of minutes. Arsenal 2, Sunderland 0, Bournemouth 1, Aston Villa 1, Burnley 2, West Ham 2, Fulham 1, Everton 1, Wolves 1, Chelsea 3, Newcastle 2, Brentford 1, Brighton 2, Crystal Palace 2, and Liverpool 1, Man City 0. So next up will be the team weakness and the highlight player, and I did focus actually on Joao Pedro, but I think it's probably worth updating the heat map. I think that needs to be changed, but yeah, I will show you that in due course and go to the top 10 captains and stuff like that specifically. I think that will help a lot of people. So we do have just under 45 minutes left until the deadline locks in, so make sure to have things ready. Let's see. Okay. So what I'll probably do here is just show you the odds and the captaincy one by one. So Arsenal, Fulham, Chelsea, Manchester United, Leeds and Brighton are in the top 6, and Sunderland are bottom against Arsenal away. There's only one team in the top 6 who play away from home, and that's Chelsea in third. But what about the captaincy? And that's where I've got Bruno Fernandes top, But Joao Pedro is a very close second. Palmer, Mbuma, and Enzo complete the top 5, but it's very close between the Argentine and the Brazilian because Gabriel is another excellent choice. He'll probably be the template captain for Double Gameweek 26 there. Salah, Cunha, Bowen, and Wilson are in my top 10, but yeah, I think it's very close between Wilson, even Ekitike, Rodgers even, and all these different players. Watkins, if he's fit and available, I think he will start. And there are plenty more where that came from. If Saka was fit, he would have been in this top 10. And I think Rice has a great shout there. And he might even deserve a spot over Harry Wilson in 10th spot. Okay, so let's put the poll out for the captaincy. And let's see what you lot think. And I will show you the predicted lineups as well and let that play in the background at one stage. Okay, so keep on plugging away at the likes, subscribe, click the hype button on YouTube, and also show support across all the social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. There's also my Discord server. I'd highly recommend you check it out, and a lot of improvements have been made to the server over the last couple of weeks, so it's definitely a great time to join, and you'll be updated on everything FPL and UCL fantasy related. Okay, so that should be done there. And yeah, Joao Pedro does cost 7.5 million. I'm also going to make a slight tweak to the top 10 captains. So I'm going to put Declan Rice in 10th spot over Harry Wilson. I think that will change as well. To be fair, he might even deserve a bit of a higher spot, all things considered, but yeah, I'm going to put him 10th. Okay, so I'm going to set up the poll now as well, and make sure to cast your vote, plug away with the shares, the likes, and all that good stuff, and yeah, let's keep the ball rolling. So, the captaincy options I'm going to put here include Bruno Fernandes. So let's put Joao Pedro, Bruno Fernandes. I think the other options would probably include Gabriel and let's put. Yeah, I think the other option that'd be quite popular, maybe Palmer. Yeah, Captaincy for sure. I think Palmer is a good captaincy option. The countdown time is not in this scene. You're going to see it later on when I show my FPL squad again, so no worries about that. Time hasn't frozen. There are 39 minutes left. Or can I count? Probably not. I'm going to put other as the option. Yeah, Joao Pedro, Bruno Fernandes, Gabriel, and other will be the captaincy poll here. Okay, let's now go to my FPL squad and the countdown timer, which you're going to see again. 38 minutes are now left. So Joao Pedro has taken an early lead. We'll go back to that very soon because I expect it to be very close between him and Bruno Fernandes. So let's see what else we've got. Ivanoson or Krupi Jr. I prefer Krupi Jr. in general, and I talked about this in recent wildcard videos. Joao Pedro, captain or Haaland? Joao Pedro. Who do I take Gibbs White out for? I have 10 million. Well, Palmer could be an option for you. Enzo Fernandez, if you don't have him already. Is Enzo better captain than Ekitike and Haaland? I think so. Start Anderson or Senesi? Anderson. I have Raya, O'Reilly, Gabriel, Mukiele, Wilson, Gakpo, Semenyo, Rogers, Ekitike, Calvert-Lewin, and Haaland. What do you think? Should I use a free hit or wild card? I'd probably say wild card. I mean, it's not a terrible team, but O'Reilly's a sell. I think Gakpo's a sell, Haaland, and they could all do something in this game on Sunday. But yeah, I think those and even Calvert-Lewin could be improved upon. I mean, with Haaland, by the way, I would keep him. It's just a case of, I think with the others, you can make some improvements. It just depends as well on your bench, because you've only listed your starting 11, I believe. But yeah, if your bench is quite weak as well, then you could easily make 6 to 8 changes, maybe even more on the wild card. Hey Dylan, is it worth swapping any of Cunha, Rogers to Mbeumo or Enzo? Also, should I play Mukiele or Gay to pair with the double Arsenal defence? I think both of them will blank, but probably Mukiele over Gay this week. Is it worth swapping those midfielders? I'm not so sure about that. I'd probably say no. I think long-term Enzo would be the better pick over Cunha, but yeah, the same goes for Mbeumo, but that might seem a bit sideways. Bruno Guimaraes to Enzo. Yes for me. I think Bruno Guimaraes will start this weekend, though. Timber injury update I provided already. He should be available. He is available, in fact, but there's no guarantee he starts over Ben White because I think Arsenal have enough depth to give players like Timber, Saka, a rest when needed. Lefebvre to Wirtz and bench Thiago or Krupi to play Wirtz or keep the transfer and play both. Just play Thiago. No need to buy Wirtz just now. Tarkovsky to Timber / Saliba or Verbruggen to Raya. I think the better move in isolation is probably Verbruggen to Raya, actually. Hi Dylan, transfer dilemma. Saka and Anderson to Mbeumo and Timber or Saka and Kelleher to Mbeumo / Enzo and Raya. I'd go to Mbeumo and Timber, but both duos are absolutely viable. Dylan, I think I'll go Joao Pedro for Ekitike. Too good of the next 3 fixtures. FOMO hitting hard. Yeah, and the thing is, I would probably even captain Joao Pedro as well. I saw only one predicted lineup that didn't have Joao Pedro in it, but the vast majority do have him there, and I think he will start for what it's worth. But I get it. I don't really blame you there. It also gives you the funds, right, to keep, at least in my case, it would give me enough funds to keep Thiago, and I can buy Timber for O'Reilly next week. So I might end up doing that as well, by the way. But then it means one of Rogers, Wilson, Thiago goes on the bench, so it's not going to be easy. Thoughts on Pedro Neto? He's doubtful with a knock. There's no guarantee he starts. I think if he's fit and available, he will get the nod, and he'll start most games for Chelsea, but I think Esteval could start this weekend. Rice or Mbeumo? I think Rice for now. Is this a possible bench boost? Raul Jimenez, Anderson, Mukiele, Dubravka? I think Mukiele lets it down, but the rest looks quite good, and you could get 10 to 15 points, which would be a solid bench boost score for a single game week. So yes, it could be a possible bench boost. Is James Hill a long-term option? I think so. Now, Diakite is still a factor, but Hill is currently first choice. Thiago's a better chance to score versus Newcastle, but Haaland is Haaland. That's why there's a big dilemma. Yeah, and even the midfielders that we're talking about and Ekitike, I think it's quite difficult to separate all of them. There are very fine margins between them. Szoboszlai to Rice for a -4 or roll and go Rice next week for free, says Owen Shot. I'd probably roll and buy Rice next week as much as I like him now. Play Sarr from Palace or Ekitike. I think Sarr's a good option, but I'd probably go for Ekitike. Buy Wirtz or Sarr? Wirtz. Van Dijk, Timber, Gabriel, Van Heck, Ballard. Who should I start? Gabriel without a shadow of a doubt. I'd also start Timber, and I'd personally go for Van Dijk. Rodon or Mukiele to Timber or roll? I would rather... Yeah, I'd rather sell Rodon, but you make an interesting point. He is significantly cheaper than Mukiele, and this week I think Rodon's better, but long-term, Mukiele is the superior option. Hey Dylan, is it worth swapping any of Cunha, Rogers to Mbeumo or Enzo? Covered that. Also, should I play Mukiele or Gay? Yeah, that's also been covered, FTT. So my answer was Mukiele, but I think both will blank, and I like Mbeumo and Enzo, but you don't need to sell Rogers or Cunha necessarily. But if you were to really push for it, I would probably say, in this case, Cunha to Enzo is my preferred move. Well, the wildcard suggestions have been referenced multiple times throughout the stream and also in my wildcard video. So if you go here, so in this section, it's a kind of rough wildcard draft. It's a bit different to what I talked about a few days ago, but I think long term I do prefer Krupi Jr. over Mane for what it's worth. And I think the rest is pretty decent anyway, so I don't mind it. If you need money, you can go for Alderete over Mukiele, but I'm quite happy with the structure as well. Already bought in Timber, thinking of taking a hit to swap Cherki to Mbeumo. I think that's reasonable, but it depends on the situation. If you're like me and you've got a benching dilemma, then just avoid the hit. But if you have a sort of weak play in your starting 11 that you don't really back to return, then in that case, take the hit, and I think Mbeumo will pay it off over time. Would you captain Pedro over Bruno? I'll be honest, if I buy in Joao Pedro, I'm very tempted to do that. And maybe the early kickoff curse is a factor in that thinking, but yeah, Fernandes has been in brilliant form. Tottenham are a bogey team for Manchester United in recent seasons, but yeah, Joao Pedro I think has a very high ceiling. He's in excellent form as well. Start one, Chow, Goodmanson or Van Heck? I would start Van Heck. Thank you as well to Punjabi for moderating the chat. Diogo says, would you play Keane or Dallo? Keane. Start Chalobah or Senesi? Still Chalobah. Ivan says, hello Dylan, what do you think will be better for the game? Hill or Gay? It'll be Hill. And Rodgers, Wilson or Thiago? I'm very conflicted about the last one. I've got the same dilemma. If I had to pick one, it's probably going to be Wilson. Semenyo to Mbeumo in one move? I still think Semenyo is good enough to keep, so no. Robert and Rudy says, hello, just joined. Thoughts on Pedro versus Bruno for captain? So in my Captaincy list, I will admit I had Bruno Fernandes top. Joao Pedro was a close second, but I'm very tempted to buy Joao Pedro for Ekitike and captain him. But then it means one of Haaland, Thiago, Wilson, or any of my midfielders except Fernandes would go to the bench. And that's where it becomes tricky. When is Saka back? We don't have a definitive timeline, but it looks quite positive and he could be available fairly soon, maybe even for Double Gameweek 26. Hi Dylan, should I start Guimaraes or Chow? Guimaraes. Start one, Chow, Goodmanson, Van Heck covered. Good luck as well to Billy. Thiago versus Newcastle, a genuine captaincy option. He scored a brace against them last time and Newcastle defence looks shaky. He is an option, but what would probably put me off is the fact it's at St James's Park and Thiago has been in pretty poor form in recent matches, and Brentford have sort of diversified their goal scoring beyond Igor Thiago, who was the clear talisman earlier this season. There's also the Kevin Schade suspension, which could be a blow, but yeah, I think it's reasonable. I just wouldn't put Thiago in my top 10 captaincy list. Going to downgrade Ekitike to Joao Pedro. Who should I spend the second free transfer on, Rice or Gabriel, if I already have Raya and Timber? I prefer Gabriel. The thing is, you've already got two Arsenal defenders, or Raya and Timber, which makes it a little bit interesting, but it's still going to be Gabriel for me. And at least that way you can go for a differential route of tripling up on the Arsenal defence, which not many will do. Oladi says, tempted to take a hit to bring in Joao Pedro for Thiago. Isn't exactly wise, but I believe he can go big. I completely get that, and despite Ekitike's brace last week, I'm still tempted to sell him for Joao Pedro now, at least for a short-term punt. And what I talked about in my team selection video and earlier today was another way of funding Timber for O'Reilly, which is by selling Thiago to Mane next week, but I'm not that infused with Mane anyway, so yeah, I think it's probably best to do something like that, what you're talking about here. For a hit is what puts me off. I think in that situation, I'd probably keep Thiago and not go for a -4 there. Dylan, who should be the third Arsenal option? Yeah, if you've got Gabriel Rice, I think the third option would be Timber. If you can't get to Timber, Hincapié is fine, but just bear in mind that Calafiori is available. And over the next 3 Premier League matches, I think Hincapié could be benched in one of them, at least. That's definitely plausible. Thanks, Dylan. Good luck to you and everyone. Thank you, Rajat. Good luck. And also to FTT. Ivan says, hello, Dylan. That's been covered. Thank you. Have you used any chips after Gameweek 19? No, I haven't used none of them. The plan is to use the majority after Gameweek 30. For Double Gameweek 26, I don't think I'll use one. Unless I have a sudden late urge or impulse to triple captain Gabriel or something like that, but it's quite unlikely. Is captaining Bowen a good differential? Yes, he's 9th in my captaincy list. I think he's decent, but West Ham are unreliable, and that's what puts me off. Virgil, Hill, or Thiago bench 1? I would bench Hill. Yeah, I would just buy Rice for free next week, as covered earlier. Free hit, says Mustafa. Interesting. I wouldn't go for Ekatike on a free hit personally, but yeah, to each their own. And I think the rest is very well thought out. And if you're bullish about Ekatike, don't let me discourage you, but that's the only pick I'd question. Tristan Parkey says, bench, Rufs, Garner, Van der Ven, Chow. Thoughts, Gabriel, Bruno. Gabriel, okay, if rival goes Bruno, might roll. Yeah, Gabriel's currently my vice captain. I might buy Joao Pedro and just go for something different, but with your squad, looks good. I think Dubravka over Rufs is the right call. Garner can give a return in any game, so it's always difficult benching him, but I understand why you've done it. Something a bit cheeky would be Garner over Semenyo, but even with that, it's not great. You did say Haaland twice, by the way. I'm just wondering who your third defender is. So you've got Gabriel and Chalobah, but I'm not sure who your third defender is in the starting 11. Maybe Munoz and DCL or Garner may be out. Fair enough. Is that Munoz then in your lineup, or you're looking to get him in? But yeah, that's interesting. Raul, DCL, Gay, bench 2, please. I'd just start Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Slide to Enzo or Roll. I already have 3 Arsenal players. I'd go to Enzo. I've got all chips available. Where can I find these projected team goals and goals conceded? Projected team goals and goals conceded. I'm not sure exactly what stat you're referring to. In terms of like XG and XGC, I get them from a variety of websites and stats. Even SofaScore sometimes, and the Premier League official numbers. But yeah, in terms of like predicted points, that can come from FPL.team, which is a free resource. You can also have a paid subscription with Fantasy Football Hub. And I usually refer to those when it comes to predicted points. Hill, Haaland, or Rodgers, start 1. Probably Rodgers, actually. Mukiele, Chow, Gay, choose 2. I would bench Mark Gay. Yeah, Captain Bowen is fine, but not my favourite. I've been very clear on that. Watkins will share his minutes with Tammy Abraham. Should go to Krupi or Evanilson. Yeah, the thing is with Krupi, he had a similar situation earlier this season. He also has 10 starts, but yeah, I think Watkins will still start most matches, but Tammy Abraham can eat up into those minutes, and we could see a similar situation to, 2 years ago with John Duran. Thoughts on a bench boost, Dubravka, Dewsbury Hall, Tarkowski, Goodmanson. That's a solid bench. Nothing spectacular, but that could do the job. Evanilson to Joao Pedro. Yes. Antoine Semenyo or Rodgers. For this week, Rodgers. Long term, I think Semenyo's the better pick. So it just depends on the context, but yeah, right now I'd start Rodgers. Chalobah, Semenyo, and Krupi, who would you bench? I would bench Antoine Semenyo. Captain Mbumo, Gabriel, Haaland. Probably Mbumo. Hill or Haaland, start 1. Haaland. On a wild card, would you pick Enzo or Palmer? Enzo. Hey Dylan, I can do Rangers to Semenyo and Timber to Gabriel for a -4. Leaves me with 0.0 in the bank. I'd probably do it then, but yeah, Timber to Gabriel for a hit this week is like a bit awkward, let's say. To be honest, you don't need to take the hit now. What I would say is do Rangers to Semenyo and then do Timber to Gabriel after the deadline and do it for free. So don't take the hit. And also, Gabriel went up in price overnight, just like Timber, so they're not going to change anytime soon. There's no need to take that hit now. Start Sanchez or Dubravka. Sanchez. You can also see it with my team. Start Foden over Bruno Guimaraes. Not. I'll just start Bruno Guimaraes. Rodgers to Enzo -4. No. Not. I wouldn't recommend that. Start Thiago or Haaland. I'm leaning towards Thiago. 1 free transfer, 0.2 million. Save free transfer or Dorgu to Hill. Next game, Barnes to Mane. I would roll. It also depends on who you've got starting already, but Hill is not someone I'd want to start anyway this week. Thank you, Nighthawk. Start Gay or Tarkowski. Very clear one for me. I'd start Tarkowski. I just saw Gakpo for Enzo. Then next game week, I'll use the wildcard. Sound plan. I think that's a good upgrade, and yeah, the wildcard could be used over the next couple of weeks for sure. Rodgers or Saliba for 26? It would be Saliba. Play Rodon or Chow? I would play Rodon. Play Senesi or Gay? Senesi. Lager says, hello Dylan, not sure what to do with Saka at the moment. Yeah, very awkward situation to be in. I'm kind of happy I sold him last week to get rid of that headache. My team, Lamens, Gabriel, Chalobah, Mateus Nunes, Bruno Fernandes, Saka, Roger, Semenyo, Enzo, Joao Pedro, Haaland on the bench, Dorgu, Krupi, Mukiele. Yeah, even though it's not that big of a deal, I put Krupi Jr. first on the bench, Dorgu last. But, with one free transfer, I would probably do Saka to Rice. I think that is probably the best thing to do. Get rid of the headache. And it also gives you more funds to triple up on Arsenal, where you could buy Timber or Raya in goal. So that could also work very well for you. Captain Enzo or Bruno? It's going to be Bruno. You saw my top 10 Captaincy list, and my updated version will be shown very soon. No, I did not wildcard this week. Otherwise, there would be quite a few changes, actually. This is what you see on screen right now, by the way, is the wildcard team that I talked about from a few days ago. That is not my current squad. This is what I've got right now. And there could be a late change. Haaland or Ekitike for this game week? Very close. I've currently got Ekitike benched, but what I'll probably end up doing is sell him to Joao Pedro and go about it that way. Aranya says, Sanchez, Gabriel, Timber, Chow, Rodgers, Enzo, Wilson, Gravenberch, Erling Haaland, Hugo, Thiago, Dubravka, O'Reilly, Dallo, Cherky, 2 free transfer, 0.3 in the bank. Okay, so you got 2 Arsenal players. I think Rice could be a nice addition for you in 26. Something I'd look at right now for you, Aranya, is Hugo Ekitike to Joao Pedro and then Gravenberch to Rice. I think that would work very well for you. Start Haaland or Semenyo? Semenyo. Hi Dylan, start Kelleher or Dubravka? Dubravka. Start 2 of Haaland, Thiago and Welbeck? I'd bench Welbeck. Hi Dylan, Ekitike, Thiago, bench 1. Probably Ekitike. Start Thiago or DCL? I would start Thiago. Haaland dropped and Pedro in and Krupi Jr. transfer in, DCL out. I think this week I prefer DCL over Krupi, but that's very close, to be fair. As for Haaland dropped, it's always difficult to say that, right? But Joao Pedro is a great acquisition for the next 3. Start Garner or Thiago? Close, but I go for Thiago. Enzo to Rodgers? No. Will Calafiori start tomorrow? It's possible, but in my predicted lineup, I've gone for Hincapié. And I'll show you that after the deadline has passed as well, I'm pretty sure. Or at least at one stage before this stream ends. Probably Hincapié over Calafiori, but with Arsenal to cover their defence, it's Gabriel, Timber and Raya in that order. Take a hit for Timber. Depends on the context, but if possible, I'd avoid it. Would you sell Cash, Tarkovsky, Anderson or Lacroix, or just roll? Got 2.4 in the bank. I would sell one of them to an Arsenal defender, but which one? Probably between Cash or Lacroix. I think Anderson and Tarkovsky could be held on to. Keane or Chow? I prefer Keane this week. Stockanu to captain, Joao Pedro, Bruno Fernandes, Gabby. Well, hopefully the poll helps you a little bit, and you can feel free to cast your vote as well. But in my poll, in my top 10 list, I've gone for Bruno Fernandes number 1 and Joao Pedro second, but I'm very tempted to bypass the early kickoff Gandhi curse and just go for Joao Pedro. Welcome to Sasa. Start Dubravka or Riffs? Dubravka. I think Cherky could start. He's not flagged anymore, and personally I'd be surprised if he was on the bench, but yeah, I would remove him for Enzo. Yes. I think long-term, that's the right call. Ahmad says, Haaland, 1 goal, Bruno Guimaraes, 1 goal, 1 assist, Joao Pedro, 2 goals, 1 assist, or 3 goals. My dream outcome for the game week and not unrealistic in my opinion. Only time will tell. I think not all of them will happen at the same time. In terms of each one individually happening, yes, it's plausible, but all at the same time, that's where the unlikelihood will come into play, in my opinion. But good luck to you. As long as Liverpool get a result, I wouldn't mind if Haaland does something. And also assuming I don't bench him. I'm going Gabriel captain. He's in my top 6 for the captaincy list. He could easily be top 5 and it's viable. He's the best defender in the game. And Arsenal are top of the clean sheet odds for a reason, so it's a good pick. I wouldn't sell Rodgers to Enzo for a hit. No. The same would go for the other way around. Transfer Semenyo to Rice or wait until next week? That's a close one. I'd probably do it now, but there's no rush. honestly, I wouldn't mind if you kept Semenyo, started him, and bought Rice in 26. Munoz or Anderson? Probably Anderson this week. Play Rodon or Chow. Rodon. Play 2. I would play Bowen and Thiago. Probably Bowen and Wilson, but Thiago's very close. I think Haaland's last there, which sounds crazy. He'll probably end up scoring. We all know how he is, but yeah, that's how I'm feeling. Bring in Joao Pedro for Haaland? No. Long term, I still think Haaland is the best striker and player in the game. Garner or Thiago? As covered earlier, it'd be Thiago. Best free forwards for this week? Bowen. Joao Pedro is number 1. He just escaped my mind for a bit. The third forward is tricky. Maybe it's Thiago. But I'm very convinced about Joao Pedro and Bowen. On paper, anyway. Okay, so I'm going to start locking in my team because there could be a late move here. I'm also going to end the Captaincy poll. Be sure to like the stream, subscribe, participate in the poll, and check out my social media platforms. There's my Discord and stuff like that. Let's get to 150 likes. We are very close towards achieving that for the stream, and also making more strides towards 39,000 subscribers. That'd be greatly appreciated. And I also want to show you my updated top 10 captains and the heat map, the official one for Joao Pedro. But yeah, I'm going to actually have a look here at Joao Pedro's record against Wolves and see what we can conjure up. He only has 1 goal against them in his career, but it was in 3 matches. Okay, so nothing spectacular. And it was a home fixture for Chelsea. So in his only game for Chelsea against Wolves, he started and scored. Not too bad. But yeah, I'm going to end this poll. Bruno Fernandes is the victor with 60%. Joao Pedro in second with just over a quarter of the votes. Gabriel is last. The other option is third. So an interesting Captaincy poll there for sure. And now, let's see what you lot think. I wish I could put more options in this poll, by the way. Would you sell Ekitike to Joao Pedro? Let's just do a simple yes or no, see what you lot are saying. And yeah, very soon I'm going to put a benching dilemma one, which is going to relate to so many of you watching, and that's for sure. So, with my scoreline predictions, you've seen them before. I've read them out. Not really much more to add there. We can talk about the team weakness and the heat map of the highlighted player for Gameweek 25. He might even be the best captaincy option over Bruno Fernandes. Will the Gandhi curse strike again with the early kickoff? Let's wait and see. And maybe that's what's pushing me towards Joao Pedro, who costs 7.5 million now in FPL, and his heat map looks very promising in conjunction with the chances Wolves concede. So Arsenal, Fulham, Chelsea, Man United, Leeds and Brighton are in the top 6 for the clean sheet odds. Sunderland are bottom. And with the top 10 captains, I've made a little change there with Declan Rice in 10th spot, facing Sunderland at home. Bowen, Cunha, Salah, Gabriel, Enzo, Mbumo, Palmer, Joao Pedro and Fernandes complete the top 10. But there could be a change at number 1 with Joao Pedro being very enticing this week, especially if he starts. So 60% of you have voted for yes in terms of selling Ekitike to Joao Pedro. And it's not just a case of having better fixtures for the next 3 game weeks, but it's also having more money, which I can then use to buy buy timber for Nico O'Reilly, because otherwise, the way to triple up on Arsenal for Double Gameweek 26 for me would be selling Thiago to Mane. I mean, yeah, that's an extra doubler, sure, but I think long-term I'd rather have Thiago. So that would be a bit counterintuitive in my opinion. So I think Ekitike to Joao Pedro looks a bit more appealing on the eye, and that's why I could end up making this move. So since this has been covered as well, we can just quickly go through predicted lineups. People are asking me, is this player going to start like Timber? I've got him in this predicted lineup with Raya, Saliba, Gabriel, Hincapié. That's another big debate. Over the next couple of matches, will Calafiori start? And of course, bear in mind that Gameweek 26 has a double for Arsenal and Wolves. So the Gunners will face Brentford away and Wolves away. And Wolves are facing Nottingham Forest away and Arsenal at home. But with the Gunners, 1 or 2 sort of hesitations. Havertz or Eze in the midfield. Gabriel Jesus or Gyökeres up front. But I think this is the most likely predicted lineup for Arsenal. And for Aston Villa, I think Watkins will start front despite the yellow flag, and the rest is what you would expect. Douglas Luiz in the midfield. And with Bournemouth, they've got a pretty settled 11 right now with the injuries they have to Tavernier and Justin Kluivert, so Krupi Jr. is the standout Cherries asset. And with Brentford, Kevin Schade is suspended, so one of Lewis Potter or Damsgaard should take his place. My other sort of considerations would be Hickey over Henry and possibly Henderson over Yarmoliuk. We're now on to Brighton, and I think with them, there's always going to be some concerns. Minter could get his first start in a while on the right-hand side, but I've gone for Gomez at the moment, and Ayari is injured. That is a massive blow against Crystal Palace. For Burnley, I think this 3-4-3 will stick, and Breuer will start up front this time over Lyle Foster. And with Chelsea, I back Joao Pedro to start. The same goes for Enzo Fernandez. I don't think James will. And with Pedro Neto, I'm almost 50-50 on it. If he's fit enough to start, he will do. But I think Esteval could be there alongside Garnacho on the wings. But that's one of my main concerns there. With Crystal Palace, I think Strand Larsen could get his Palace debut against... by the way, I think... Yeah, that is wrong. I think that is wrong with the first fixture. So yeah, Palace, I didn't update. They are facing Brighton away next. Have I... Yeah, this is right. So yeah, Crystal Palace was the one I need to update. Okay, fair enough. With Everton, I think Branthwaite, Keane and Tarkowski will start simultaneously again. I'd personally avoid Ndiaye for the time being, but he is still a decent FPL asset. With Fulham, there's not really anyone apart from Wilson who really springs to mind. I think Anderson is okay, but the rest aren't really worth the investment. And with Leeds, Calvert-Lewin has dipped a little bit in form, but he should start up front again with Okafor, and we could see a few changes at the back, and Justin would be there alongside Rodon and Struijk, Longstaff and Aronson in the midfield with Ampadu. With Liverpool, I think they'll go for this starting 11, and I think Ekitike will lead the line again. His minutes have been a bit all over the place in recent weeks. And with Man City, whilst O'Reilly could play at left back, I think it could be Nuri this time round, and Foden would be on the bench. I'm very confident that Cherki will start. The same goes for Haaland. And with Man United, they've had a settled 11 under Michael Carrick, and Matheus Cunha is now a consistent starter following the injury to Patrick Dorgu. I think the rest speaks for itself. And with Newcastle, Bruno Guimaraes should start, and he is not too far away from a return. So if it's not against Brentford, it should be against Tottenham. The same goes for Anthony Gordon, who will miss this weekend. With Nottingham Forest, who are facing Leeds away tonight, I think they'll go for Morato to replace the suspended Nico Williams, and we could see a debut for Ortega Moreno, who was signed only a week ago. For the last couple of teams, that includes Sunderland, who have a settled 11 as well on paper, and this could also be a back five against Arsenal. Tottenham Hotspur playing a back three at the moment, and Van der Ven has been cleared. Jed Spence remains a doubt, but I think he'll start against Manchester United, and I think Xavi Simons and Solanke are showing promising form in the last couple of matches. With West Ham, Bowen is the standout asset, and I think we'll see Kilman replace the suspended Todibo. And there could be a return in the Wolves backline with Krejci no longer injured, and Agbadu would make way, and the rest should stay the same with Rodrigo Gomez as the right wing back. So I might make a fool of myself right now, but I am tempted to use a coin when it comes to the captaincy and my transfer and stuff like that. It hasn't let me down so far, to be fair. Welcome, Oogie Boogie. Good to see you. Hopefully you're doing well too. Dylan, what to do with Cherki? I think he's a sell. You've already got some pretty quality. You've got some quality FPL assets in the midfield, but Semenyo could be a good replacement for him. Might seem like for like, to be fair. Rodgers is solid. Bruno Guimaraes when he's available. But because you've already got the majority of midfielders I'd recommend buying, mainly Rice and Enzo, of course Fernandes goes without saying, I think, yeah, with Cherki it's an awkward situation, but I'd still be tempted to sell. You've also got Wilson, Anderson, and some decent midfielders at a similar price tag, and I think Garner would be one of them. So, yeah, it's not a must-sell, not a priority. I think he will start, but I would be considering it, especially if it gives you more money to then buy Timber at the back or something like that. Saka to Rice or Rodgers? It's going to be Rice. Likewise, Sydney. Hopefully you're doing well too. Dylan, should I start Virgil or Rodon? I'd go for Van Dijk. Mbeumo or Gabriel captain? Probably Mbeumo, just about. I've got Mbeumo 4th and Gabriel 6th in the list. But ultimately, not much separates them, and Enzo's in between. Who's a better pick from Gameweek 26 to 31, Rodgers or Saliba? Probably Rodgers still, but Saliba has the double, of course, in his favour. And bear in mind that Arsenal will blank in 31. That's why they're doubling in 26. So, yeah, that's going to be the same number of games played in that time frame. So yeah, I'm just having a look now and seeing if we can get any information. I doubt we're going to get any leaks, by the way. But yeah. Let's see. I'm going to go for another Chelsea predicted lineup and then make my final decision, because I think that's the key. Ekitike to Joao Pedro. I've already got a benching dilemma anyway. And next week the plan is to get Timber and triple up on Arsenal. So that isn't going to change too much. So with the Premier League website anyway, they have gone for Joao Pedro up front. And let's see. Yeah, I've seen quite a few of these, actually. And Ekitike will surely start against Man City, but yeah, it's time to make a decision here. And I think I'm going to go for Joao Pedro. And then it's about benching one of these players. It's going to be absolutely insane. It's already a very tough decision as it is. I said as soon as Pedro scored versus Brentford, we should get him in, but haven't. Shall I get him now for Thiago? I still like Thiago. I think long-term he's a good pick, but I probably would make the switch here. Or roll, get Munoz for Chow. Or maybe Ndai for Ghana. I just don't really see Ndai as an upgrade on Ghana, which I've told you as well in recent streams. So I think Joao Pedro for Thiago is the best move. Bowen captain, take a punt. He's 9th on my list. He's a good pick. Differential, but West Ham are unreliable. I mean, there's not really much more I can say about that. Some good captains for you recently, to be fair. So maybe that's a sign. Yeah, very close to locking in. Less than 5 minutes now. Should I start Chalobah or Krupi? Probably Chalobah, but I do like Krupi even now. I think we should watch Rayan for the few weeks. Last match he assisted against Wolves. Yeah, possibly one to watch, but I just think with City, it's Mark Gay to cover their defence or nothing, and at the moment, I'm not really too keen. Do you prefer Ekitike or Thiago? I think Thiago long-term is better than Ekitike. But look, in my situation, the reason why Ekitike to Joao Pedro makes sense is because it also gives me funds to buy Timber next week for O'Reilly. So I'm doing two things with those moves, and it really makes sense for my squad. But everyone's situation is different. Should I buy Raya for Verbruggen to triple up on Arsenal, or wait for more information before the double? Probably wait for more information before the double, but Arsenal are top of the clean sheet odds this week. I think buying Ryan now is a good move, and long term, yeah, he's going to keep plenty of clean sheets, and Arsenal have great fixtures from now until the end of the season, with a few exceptions here and there. I think is a massive upgrade on Verbruggen, so I think both are viable, but information is so important, and by then you might want Timber or a different asset to complement the other Arsenal assets. Hi Dylan, captain Pedro or Bruno? So Bruno is top of my list, but I'll be very honest, and maybe it's influenced by the Gandhi curse, the early kickoff. I might end up buying Joao Pedro and captaining him. I'm very tempted by that. So yeah, there's not really much more I can say on that. Gay start. He'll start against Liverpool. In terms of FPL, I wouldn't recommend starting him, no. Verbruggen or Dubravka, I'd start Verbruggen. Quite close though. Fernandes captain or Pedro. Fernandes is probably the safer pick, and he's been in incredible form. Joao Pedro's also been quite promising and quite consistent, but yeah, I think Fernandes is probably the better pick. Tottenham is the more difficult fixture, especially for United, who have really struggled against them. Start Verbruggen or Kelleher, Verbruggen, Rodgers or Jimenez, Rodgers, O'Reilly or Lewis Potter. I'd start Lewis Potter, even though there's no guarantee he starts, but I think he will in Kevin Schade absence. Start Semenyo, Calvert-Lewin. This is very close this week. I'd lean towards Calvert-Lewin. I would start Van Dijk over Semenyo, Munoz or Van Dijk in long term until wildcard 32. Van Dijk at the moment. Yeah, that'd be my sort of pick. All right, so I am selling Ekitike, which might sound crazy. And yeah, by the time we get to Gameweek 28, 29, I might regret it, or I'll try to get him back. But yeah, I am probably going to do this. And yeah, ultimately that's going to be the way it goes, right? So Joao Pedro in for Ekitike, and then next week I can buy... Actually, what am I saying? I can't even afford this anymore. Yeah, I can't even afford O'Reilly to Timber. Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's not ideal, but it does help me quite a lot. I think I was using FPL.team and they had the different prices in terms of selling and purchase, and that can throw you off. But yeah, I think Ekitike to Joao Pedro, that would have made a lot of sense to me in my case. But now it's just about benching someone. So I'll probably leave it as is. Captain Fernandez, Vice Captain Gabriel, and then it's just about Ekitike, Haaland, Thiago, Rodgers. Who do I even bench from these lot? It's very difficult to say. And look, don't get me wrong, I don't suddenly think Joao Pedro's not worth buying, but then it would mean taking a hit to get Timber. So because of that, I'm probably going to avoid it and just stick with free transfers. So let's do Haaland, Ekitike, Thiago, Wilson. I guess Wilson would be the other one. I don't think I'll bench Rodgers. But yeah, we've literally got seconds left now. So it's all about locking in. And I'll be ready just in case. Triple up on Chelsea's my worry. I get that. And I also thought about it when looking at that sort of thing. Ekitike's top of the vote. I didn't expect that because people keep on... Yeah, now he's gone down to second. Thiago is the one people recommend benching. Go Pedro, do it. Yeah, but like I said to Stipaki, based on my sort of plans, to then get Timber, it means a -4. So because of that, it puts me off. You think it's a week where you can get away with benching Haaland? Yes, it is a week where you can get away with it. So this is a very close one. Thiago Ekitike is what people are saying. I've currently got Thiago in the starting 11, Ekitike on the bench. What could possibly go wrong? Well, I've stuck to my guns. Ekitike is on my bench, and only time will tell if that's a moment of madness or just a good decision or a bit of luck. Only time will tell. First sub, Rodon or Krupi. I still prefer Krupi, higher ceiling. Start Kelleher or Dubravka. Start Mane or Ghana. I bought in Pedro. Yeah, if I still had enough money to buy Timber for O'Reilly next week, then I would have bought Joao Pedro for Ekitike and then probably benched one of those players in the poll that I mentioned. Even Rodgers wouldn't be too far behind from that benching dilemma. Yeah, there could be frustrations here, and there always is when you have such a benching dilemma. You might end up going for the wrong one and leaving someone out who ends up hauling, and then certain players in your starting 11 blank, but it is what it is, right? Rolled this week, good luck all. Likewise, hey Charmy. I've also rolled. Start Evanescent or Harry Wilson. I would start Wilson. Defense for under 4.7. Already have Hill Alderete. I think under 4.7, Van der Ven would enter the equation. Otherwise, it's kind of slim pickings, but yeah, those are the main two I discussed in my wildcard video. Under 4.7. Maybe Anderson. Yeah, Keane is good. He obviously went down to 4.7 recently. The problem is with Branthwaite back, and if Mikalenko returns soon, we could see Keane on the bench. So I think Anderson might be the safest bet. Kanate or Dallo Anderson? I'd say Kanate, based on my prediction. So maybe I should have benched Haaland, but I want to also jinx him. I took a minus, I'm guessing a 4 or 3 hits. Let me know what you meant by that. Is that a -4 or -12? Because of the next 3 fixtures. But either way, good luck. Yeah, I get you. I sent before you said that. Yeah, because I wanted Joao Pedro. But yeah, I don't know why. For some reason, I thought I had enough money. So I'm not sure if on one website it said I had enough, and that caught me off guard, but I read it wrong. And that changes things a little bit. So yeah, good luck as well, Sudindra. And yeah, hopefully we all get green arrows. Locked in indeed, Awali. Good luck also to Wizen. It's time that Dalu does a Wildie. He has to do something, man, because he's been absolute crap for me. Pedro, my captain. I like that. Yeah, I think Pedro is a very good shout. If Fernandez is thwarted by the early kickoff curse, I might end up regretting it. Yeah, Gameweek locked now. Exactly that. Good luck as well, MMK. Surprise you benched Ekitike. Me as a City fan too, hoping we win at Anfield. So look, I think Liverpool will win, and I hope they do, but I think it'll be like a low-scoring affair. And yeah, it's still going to be tough for me to bench Haaland, right? But he was someone I was genuinely considering benching for the first time in FPL. We're locked in, says Adam is everywhere. Good luck, everyone. I did a -8, says Adamak. Yeah, quite a few hits flying around. Maybe I'm allergic to taking hits right now, but it is what it is. Kiddo says, save my free transfer next game week. Dorgu and Barnes to Hill and Mane, Dubravka, Timber, Gabriel, Anderson, Rice, Wilson, Enzo, Rogers, Bruno captain, Ekitike, Haaland, with Verbruggen, Michele, Dorgu, Barnes on the bench. That's reasonable, and I think having 2 or 3 transfers in 26 is very useful, and if you have more than that, even better. But yeah, I think next week... Just to let you know, by the way, kiddo, Mane is classified as a forward in this game, so you can't do Barnes to Mane directly. So just bear that in mind. Ian says, hey Dylan, I hope you did a wise benching Ekitike, because right now Bowen is way better than Thiago. Thiago's let us down so many times. I think what bothers me about Thiago is the fact that when I've captained him, he has really let me down. And before I bought him in my permanent team, he was doing so well. So he has tailed off, and he does rely a lot on penalties, but he scored a brace against Newcastle, and I'm hoping he can do something again. Is Van Hector Munoz next game a good option, Dylan? I'm seeing a lot of people mentioning Munoz, and I talked about him as a possible defender to buy when he came back from injury, but I need to see improvements from Palace first. I think he offers not enough value in terms of clean sheet output and returns to justify that premium price tag. So I'd rather go for the Arsenal defender instead. Exoli says -4, fair enough, not too bad. Locked and loaded, it's going to be a very high disparative game at 25. You either score good or you score very low. I'm thinking of Gattuso and his famous press conference. Good luck as well, kiddo. And also to Ollie, no problem. Hopefully the answers have given you some insight and it leads to some points being gained. Twisted Parker says, I really haven't looked at it because last few weeks have been miserable. How am I going to keep Pedro, get Munoz and Thiago back now? We'll cross that bridge when the time comes, right? But it's always nice to look ahead. I do like the planning element of FPL, so I completely get that. Armand says we are 3 points apart, Dylan. Hopefully this means I'll leap from you in the ranks. Hopefully not, but all the best to you as well. Zero says, yeah, I benched Thiago as well and played Ekitike. I wish the best of luck to my favourite Spanish friend. Yeah, I think that swing could be brutal either way. I'm just hoping I'm not on the wrong end of it. Good luck as well, Johnny Love Music. 75 last week, benched Rice and took a punt on Brobby, but unfortunately didn't pay off. Next week, Mane in for Brobby, and we'll bench Wirtz, Semenyo, Bruno, Rice, and Bumo. Up front, Haaland, Bowen, and Mane. Yeah, good score last week, and some pretty decent picks that have paid off in the last couple of weeks. Not all of them, but still. Holy Clouds last game week did a wild card, got 72 points and a green arrow. The team was so bad, just did a -16. I'm not going to lie to you, Ian. If you wildcard, don't take massive hits the next week. You have to give your players time to breathe and to produce returns for you. So I don't think that's the right approach, personally. Adamak says, I took a -8, Thiago, Riley, and De Koipa for Joao Pedro, Timber, and Hill. I think that's a good set of hits, and Joao Pedro and Timber obviously are the main ones. Hill is the facilitator, and Bournemouth have good fixtures, so I think that works. Barnes, okay, fair enough, fair enough. I stand corrected. Burnley, 4.2 million. Yeah, looks good. Yeah, that's an upgrade anyway, even though I don't back Wolves that much, and part of the double is Arsenal. But there you go. Is it even worth doing this? Let's see. Thiago versus Ekitike is like the big debate. So let's say Thiago is going to be heads and Ekitike is going to be tails. So let's flick this properly. That's a fuck. Why do I always do the first one shit? I don't even know why. Even that one wasn't great. It did land on Ekatike, so it wasn't a very good throw. I could retry, to be fair, but that's not good. The coin usually does quite well when it comes to 50-50 calls, just saying. So the less said about that, the better. So even if you are on your way out, be sure to drop a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and click the hype button on YouTube, on the app, and check out all the links in the description. There's my FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and there are many ways to keep the conversation going. But I did say it earlier, the plan is to gift some memberships, and that's what I'm going to be doing right now. So let's end the poll too. And we're going to also end the timer because that's it. It's gone for the past 7 minutes. So let's see who gets these 5 memberships first. And I'll be gifting 5 more towards the end. So to Aksha, Sizwi, and hopefully I'm not butchering any names, but I probably am. To Carl, EPM, and to J Rid, enjoy early access to my videos, proud to comments, and many other perks for an entire month. And a big up to Ahmad and Keith for gifting memberships earlier in the stream. This time I went with Bruno Fernandes as my captain and Joao Pedro as the vice. Yeah, they're my top 2 suggestions in the captaincy list I referred to a few times throughout the week. And yeah, I think Bruno Fernandes just about shades it. The only downside, really, well, you could say 2. One of them being that Tottenham is a bit of a bogey team for United, and the other one is going to be the early kickoff. Yeah, thanks for the advice, mate. I think I just went in so early. I've been quite consistent that I want to save the wildcard for after Gameweek 30, but I'm still open-minded, right? And if I feel like I need to, I will pull the trigger. But yeah, a lot of people have mentioned Gameweek 24, and that was a very popular time to wildcard in the grand scheme of things, maybe more popular than I expected. But yeah, it's not going to be like a template community move in general. And Billy says, I immediately feel the red arrows somehow. Come on, let's manifest some green arrows. We'll also put it in the chat. So this is what's heading everyone's way. Green arrows, yeah? Cheers. Next game week is on Tuesday. Do we get press conference before the deadline? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of these very quick turnarounds sometimes, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, the press conferences, there's going to be a lot of embargoes, really. It's not going to be the same where you get updated information later in the week with more training sessions and stuff like that, and tests and whatever it is. So it's not really like that. It's a bit different when you have a midweek deadline. But yeah, the next deadline is at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 10th of February. So yeah, we've got some very quick turnarounds coming up. Well, at least for this one. Then there's a bit of a break until the 21st of February. So yeah, that should be quite interesting indeed. Johnny says, yeah, it paid off pretty well the last couple of weeks. Bruno captain, Semenyo the week before, and going with Bowen this time round. Cheers, mate, and best of luck. I do like those differential captains, and I'll be honest, from my experience, whenever I chop and change the armband, it typically is very frustrating. And I tend to just stick with one captain and sort of back them through their form and purple patch. But yeah, your approach is working right now, and you've got to keep it going. Tiramisu or apple crumble? What? I like both of them, to be fair. That's very difficult. Maybe tiramisu, but very, very close. Hopefully not, says Billy. Yeah, exactly. Hopefully green arrows. We are manifesting for green arrows. Exactly that, Ian. God damn it, I didn't realize Bruno's playing early. Yeah, but come on, hopefully, or surely he breaks that curse, right? That's a major reason why I was looking at buying Pedro and captaining him as well. But it is what it is. I need some luck. Such a bad season. Yeah, it can feel that way, and it definitely demotivates you from playing, but yeah, hopefully your fortunes turn and you can start enjoying the game even more. Gameweek 26, I'm so tempted to triple captain Gabriel or Timber. I don't really blame you. I mentioned that possibility earlier, but it's quite unlikely for me. I will captain Gabriel, I believe, and add Timber to my ranks. That's the current plan. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show you some actual lineups. That's what I'm going to do. But before I actually get to that, let's show you FPL challenge as well. Again, I've gone for Raya, Munoz, Gabriel, Palmer, Bruno Fernandes, and Joao Pedro captain in this format. I don't see myself changing too much though, but maybe one modification is possible, and I'll try to be alert with the deadlines, with the lineups, and then I can adjust accordingly, but I haven't really done that with FPL Challenge all season. And I'll leave my scoreline predictions on screen, so you can have a bit of an insight into which teams I think will keep a clean sheet and the reason why I've picked certain players over others. But I will go through the lineups. So let's go to Leeds and Nottingham Forest and have them ready for you. And let's go for Nottingham Forest. Okay, so in just over a minute, we'll get that lineup and we can go through it, or those lineups. Let's get to 150 likes as well. Thank you to those that have supported the channel. I will be gifting 5 more memberships in the coming minutes, so stay tuned for that. And it is random, but yeah, all the best with that. Raya, Timber, Gabriel, let's ride. Well, yeah, triple up in Arsenal defense. It's not a bad idea. My preference is probably 2 with Timber, Gabriel, and Rice, but yeah, that's still reasonable. Double Gameweek 26 is captaining Gabriel, good thing. I think a lot of people will be doing it. It's going to be a very template move from the community. I'll probably do it myself, but I am open to something a little bit different. Maybe Rice could be an alternative solution. Someone also mentioned Jirin Timber as well. That was Ahmed just now. So yeah, I think it's definitely viable, and it would appeal to me more than most captaincy options, even Fernandes facing West Ham away, and Erling Haaland and stuff like that. Yeah, enjoy that Twisted Parky. I'm going to have a coffee just after this. It is quite cold here, so yeah, I need something to warm me up. Well, playing early probably gives Bruno more chances to get DEFCON in updates, probably. That's the good thing about it, but in terms of goals and assists, for some reason, the chances dramatically decrease. Adam is everywhere says 1 away win, Dylan. Yeah, I haven't really noticed that, to be fair. Yeah, I'm backing a lot of home wins, a lot of draws. Yeah, and that's Chelsea as the only away victor. Look, if there were to be another away winner, I think Tottenham could be one. So I wouldn't say United winning is a certainty. Definitely not. I think West Ham would be another possible victor. Aston Villa, Everton. But I think a lot of those games are so tough to call, and I've gone for that. So yeah, we'll see. But that's a good shout. I didn't really think of it that way. Dylan, I think Madueke could be a shout punt for Double Gameweek 26. Not for me, though. He's just too inconsistent, and he played well against Leeds, stepped in very well for Bukayo Saka, but Arteta provided a very positive update on him today, and we could see him available for either Double Gameweek 26 or the North London Derby shortly afterwards. I feel like I want to go against Gabriel too next week. Yeah, I get that, but it's not very often that I captain Gabriel, and I probably should do it more often. And yeah, at the moment, it's very likely that I will, but we'll talk about this on Tuesday's deadline. The UK is cold as hell and falling to pieces. Yeah, it's very cold, to say the least, and you could say it's been declining for quite a while, but yeah, let's manifest positivity, even though, yeah, we're just being realistic with that one. All right, I do have the Leeds and Nottingham Forest lineups. So let's start off with the home team. Darlow, Bogle, Goodmanson, Rodon, Strauch, Justin, Ampadu, Gruev, Aronson, Okafor, and Calvert-Lewin. So I believe that's 10 out of 11 correct from my predicted lineup. With Nottingham Forest, very similar. Ortega Moreno does get his first start with Morato, Sangare, Hudson-Odoi, Anderson, Gibbs-White, Dominguez, Igor Jesus, Milenkovic, Aina, and Abbott. So that's 9 correct for the away team. So with Hudson-Odoi, I'm not too surprised about that, but Abbott is definitely going to be the bigger shock there. So that's it. Both lineups covered for the Friday night kickoff. Hopefully you enjoy it and have a great week. I didn't mean to do that, by the way. That's a Nottingham Forest fan. Very nice. But yeah, hopefully you have enjoyed this stream. It has been a blast covering the team news, the injury updates, answering all your questions, and just talking about Fantasy Premier League. But don't go anywhere, because yeah, I still got 5 more memberships to gift before I say adieu or ciao, adios. So 5 more memberships, and then we can call it a good night. So there you go. The last set is complete. So Kuka 2, Bass 4 Hands, Norby 524, Maybach, and Matic. Enjoy the membership for an entire month. Take care as well, Adam, and thank you. Yeah, Ortega, I did some research on it, and yeah, I thought he would start, but they also had a lot of injuries as well with Sells and John. So yeah. Who is Abbott for Forest? He is an option for my religious team moving forward. Honestly, I have no idea. I'm just giving you the honest truth there. That's why I'm very surprised by that. Hudson-Odoi was something that could have happened. I'm not too surprised by that sort of change or him being in the lineup. But yeah, Abbott is something I couldn't have foreseen, really. You think Burnley can get 1 point against the West Ham team that's starting to turn things around? Well, yeah, they can, is the honest answer. Burnley are at home. West Ham, I know they've improved recently, but they still let a 2-0 lead slip against Chelsea. And I think defensively, both teams are quite poor. But of course, West Ham have quality players like Bowen who can make the difference. But I don't think a result is clear-cut either way. Timber's been getting into great offensive positions lately and so unlucky not to get more points. They seem like they are coming for sure. Yeah, he can be frustrating sometimes, and when he plays as a left-back, I don't like him as an FPL asset because offensively he looks very awkward there. But on the right, yeah, he has definitely improved this season, that's for sure. Billy says, yeah, great week. Yes, that's what we're hoping and manifesting. There you go, Ahmed. That's a great emoji to sum it up, and thank you for gifting 10 memberships early as well. No worries, Cooker, and yeah, YouTube have chosen you, so enjoy it. Nighthawk says, hi Dylan, thank you for your content. Much appreciated, and I will see you very soon. The next deadline stream will be on Tuesday, so don't be caught out by that. And if possible, I'll do a reaction stream tomorrow, so stay tuned. Double Gameweek, I'm thinking of captaining Gabriel. Unfortunately, mate, you're not the only one. I think a lot of us will be doing that, but I'll try to uncover some differentials to captain, to buy, because the ideal Arsenal triple up is going to be quite standard, and I've been saying it quite often in these streams. Night already? No. Take care, says Twisted Parky. Yeah, but it has been almost 3 hours, and I'm going to give my voice a little bit of a rest here. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoy the football and all that good stuff. And just as a reminder, this is my FPL challenge squad. Raya, Munoz, Gabriel, Palmer, Bruno Fernandes, and Joao Pedro as my captain. What could possibly go wrong? I might even regret not buying Joao Pedro in my normal team. And this is probably the most awkward week for me in terms of benching dilemmas. With my normal squad, I benched Ekitike, and I don't feel good about it whatsoever. If you haven't done so already, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date on my content, both FPL and UCL Fantasy. You can also share this video around with those that love those fantasy formats, and yeah, I'll be covering them for the rest of the season, and I have been doing it for the past 6 years at this point. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, fair access to my videos, proud to comments, amongst my other perks, my Discord server, the FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, as well as Spotify can also be found in the description. And be sure to leave a 5-star review on Spotify. It really helps us out, and yeah, just massively appreciate. I do like the community a lot. So I've got a Discord server, and I would encourage you to join that as well. So bye-bye, Zero, and I will see you very soon, Punjabi, for Gameweek 26. Good luck. Triple Captain Timber in 26. I'm locking it in now. Wow, that's a very early call, Ahmad, and that is certainly differential. If he does get an attack in return, you will be beaming. Yeah, I joined late due to work. Yeah, no worries about that. Yeah, I completely understand. Sometimes it can get in the way of FPL and these streams. Zero says 2 players from the same team. Yeah, this week you can do that in FPL Challenge because they are promoting the players from Brighton and Palace. So those players will be awarded double points. And yeah, you can pick 3 players per club, I believe it is. So yeah, and also an unlimited budget, which is why I've got 2 Chelsea and to Arsenal. So yeah, that caught people off. I did talk about this earlier. I made a reference to the rules specifically. And that's why I've got Daniel Munoz, by the way, just because Palace and Brighton players scored double points. And yeah, I've used this as an opportunity to sort of rarely double up on Arsenal and Chelsea, because earlier this season, in most of the challenges, you can only pick one per club. Good luck as well, Ian. And everyone, peace out. As I usually say when I come here, I usually get green arrows. Well, may the good luck continue and this streak. And yeah, that's very good to hear. I think I might triple Timber as well, even though he has not done anything. Well, we'll talk about that over the weekend and certainly going into Monday and Tuesday. But there's a lot to discuss there. And we will have more triple captaincy opportunities later this season when it comes to double game weeks. Yeah, I think Timber does offer more assist threat and from open play. But then you've got Gabriel with the bullet headers, and from set pieces, he's an absolute menace. So yeah, thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, Twisted Parky, to Keith and everyone else, all the moderators as well. I'm not so sure about that, Twisted Parky. Never say never. But yeah, I'm just not really feeling Danny Welbeck this week. He's very difficult to predict when he's going to return. But yeah, good luck to you and to Brighton. And yeah, let's see what you can conjure up against Crystal Palace, who you absolutely love. Take care, everyone. It's been a blast talking to you, and I wish you all the best of luck for Gameweek 25 and the rest of the season. I'll see you very soon. Yeah, my ballot pick worked out as well, Twisted Parky. Not too shabby at all. And hopefully we get more of those for FPL Challenge and FPL. But Tuesday's the next deadline, and the plan is to do a reaction stream tomorrow for Fantasy Premier League, and I'll try to do a best wildcard squad, my team selection, and a transfer tips in the meantime. So let's get those green arrows and enjoy the football as always. I'll see you soon.